Yes. Bharti, let's start.
Yeah. So, good evening and namaskar everyone. That we are today again on the Chai Pe Charcha, and today the topic is very interesting. That is pregnancy mein sugar ki baat. So we all know that sugar is good, but of course in pregnancy, gestation diabetes mellitus, that is a very important issue at global level, and we have in India it is a big challenge. So today we have kept this webinar on Chai Pe Charcha, and again big hats off to our ICOG chairperson, none other than Dr. Lakshmi Shrikande Madam, with whole FOGSI team, Dr. Paye, Dr. Madhuri, and all Vice President, and Dr. Parag, as well as Secretary, Dr. Ashok, and all the ICOG team, enthusiastic team that doing all months such a good and great webinars. So today, without doing any delay, I'm just going to brief today's highlight of the program. That is, we have today's with us Dr. Lakshmi Shrikande as a speaker, Professor V. Sesha sir, as well as Professor Anuj Maheshwari, and Dr. Sunil Gupta, Dr. Parag Beniwale sir as a chairperson, Dr. Uday Thanewala, and with us expert Dr. Preeti, Dr. Komal, Dr. Suman, as well as Dr. Veena Samant. So I think that in next 2 hours, we are going to have a very interesting sessions on gestation diabetes mellitus. So without doing any delay, because we have today's lots of postgraduates, lots of faculties, and lots of practitioners going to just join our session. So I just want to introduce our first speaker and first chairperson, Nilima. Can you share the PPT of Dr. Sunil, CP? I'm just going to do from my laptop.
Okay, ma'am. Just a minute.
Okay. I am just joining the Zoom.
Let us start with our inauguration program. Meantime, Sunil will log in. Bharti.
Yeah.
Meantime, Bharti is searching for his CV. So friends, very good afternoon, one and all, and I'm so happy in the capacity of ICOG chair to be with you all on this Chai Pe Charcha on pregnancy mein sugar ki baat. At the outset, I place on record my sincere gratitude to our FOGSI President, Dr. Rishikesh Pai, Secretary General, Dr. Madhuri Patel, and all the FOGSI office bearers for their constant support, encouragement, and guidance. I also appreciate our Vice Chair, Dr. Parag Beniwale, Secretary, Dr. Ashok Kumar, and Convener, Dr. Bharti. Bharti has already taken the names of all the speakers, experts, and chairpersons. I would like to just take the name of Padma Shri Professor V. Seshaiya and Anuj Maheshwari, who are not our members, but they have logged in and they will be guiding our fellows and members on this crucial subject of gestational diabetes mellitus. Friends, this is so important. When I was going through the statistics, we are home to 77 million diabetics, that is second highest in the world. And when it comes to hyperglycemia in pregnancy, globally there are 21.4 million women, and out of this, India is contributing 5.7 million women with hyperglycemia in pregnancy. So it's a huge burden. And as per DIPSI survey only, the prevalence of GDM is ranging from 17% in the urban area to 9.9% in rural area. And I was so surprised that Kerala, where the literacy rate is so high, it is the diabetes capital of India with prevalence as high as 20%. So naturally, we all keep wondering why we are so susceptible to diabetes, and there are many factors: our change in lifestyle, migration to urban areas, rising per capita, our eating habits, everything is contributing to this increased burden of diabetes and gestational diabetes. And as an obstetrician, we all are concerned with the toll it takes on the maternal and fetal health. And that is why we have chosen this subject for Chai Pe Charcha today. And we would like to highlight and cover all the important points which every obstetrician should know as far as GDM is concerned. I take this opportunity to welcome all the dear delegates. Happy learning to one and all. I hand over back to Bharti for further proceedings. Bharti? नीलिमा अभी दिखा दो तुम चेयरपर्सन का सीवी. नीलिमा, Bharti, are you with me? Dr. Sunil Gupta has logged in. Sunil?
No, ma'am.
Sunil, you are logged in?
No, ma'am. Sir is not here.
Sunil has not logged in. So no problem. Parag is here?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Preeti is here. So Preeti, I think Bharti is having some problem with the network. Bharti?
Yeah.
Preeti, you can introduce me and so that I can start with my...
I am here.
Acha,
Yeah. So Dr. Sunil, he is not here, so he will join once he will come. So he was the chairperson of today's session. We all know he was the National President of Diabetes in India Study Group of India, National Treasurer of RRSTI, and a renowned diabetes specialist as well as physician. So Neelima, please give the Dr. Lakshmi Madam slide. Yeah, so today's speaker is Dr. Lakshmi Shrikhande. We all know that she's the chairperson ICOG, National Corresponding Editor Journal of OBGYN India, Yogi, National Corresponding Secretary, Association of Medical Women India, Founder, Patron and President, ISOPAB, Vidarbha Chapter, Chairperson, IMS Education Committee, President, Association of Medical Women, Nagpur, Nagpur Ratan Award, Hands of Union Minister by Shri Nitin Ji, received Bharat Excellent Award for Women's Health, received Mehru Dada Hansotia Best Committee Award, Chairperson HIV AIDS Committee, and he received lots of awards like doing the work in the Saving the Girl Child, as well as remain the Senior Vice President FOGSI 2012. President Menopause Society Nagpur, as well as President Nagpur OBGYN Society, delivered many orations and guest lectures and lots of publication. So now next to Dr. Lakshmi Shrikhande Madam for her topic, GDM, what obstetrician must know. Madam.
Thank you so much, Bharti, for your kind introduction. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes.
So as Bharti has already said, it is Chai Pe Charcha on sugar in pregnancy. So first and foremost, that it is really a myth that a woman has to eat for two. So friends, no sweets for two. That is the first take-home message for all the women also and for all the obstetricians. Now let us see, when we say diabetes in pregnancy, it can be a pre-existing diabetes or gestational diabetes. Pre-existing diabetes can be type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes can again be a pre-existing diabetes or it can be a true GDM. So when we are talking of gestational diabetes mellitus, it is hyperglycemia during pregnancy, that is not diabetes. Hyperglycemia diagnosed for the first time during pregnancy, and it may occur any time during pregnancy, but most likely after 24 weeks. What about pre-existing diabetes? It is diagnosed before the start of pregnancy, or it is the hyperglycemia which is diagnosed for the first time in pregnancy. It may occur any time during pregnancy, including the first trimester. So what is the prevalence? 22 million women between 20 to 39 years, they have diabetes. That is 2010 data, and it was expected to rise by 20% in the next 10 years. 54 million women with impaired glucose tolerance or pre-diabetes have the potential to develop GDM if they become pregnant. And the prevalence of GDM in India varies from 3.8% to 21% in different parts of the country, depending on the geographical location and diagnostic method used. However, it is found to be more prevalent in urban areas than the rural areas. So in my presentation, I will be covering the definition, whom to screen, how to diagnose, antenatal, intranatal, postnatal management, and can we really prevent the GDM. I will not go into the details of the pathophysiology of GDM, but I will focus more on screening versus diagnostic testing. Remember, the purpose of screening is to identify asymptomatic individuals with a high probability of having or developing a specific disease. So, whom to screen? Universal screening appears to be the optimum approach as the Indian women have 11-fold increased risk of developing glucose intolerance during pregnancy compared to Caucasian women. Which screening method? I am discussing only DIPSI because Government of India has endorsed this screening method and we are practically speaking following this method in our day-to-day practice. This is a one-step approach, and on 14th March 2007, as I was saying, our Government of India has issued the instructions that universal screening of glucose intolerance during pregnancy should be mandatory. And this order recommends that all women should be screened between 24 to 28 weeks of gestation with 2 hour one test after giving 75 gram of oral glucose. So how to do it? 75 gram of glucose has to be consumed with 300 ml of water irrespective of last meal. This 300 ml has to be ingested within 5 to 10 minutes and the blood sugar has to be measured after 2 hours. If she vomits within 30 minutes of the intake, then repeat test next day is advised. Once you do any test, we should know how to interpret it. So this is the interpretation of DIPSI test. If it is more than 200, it is diabetes. Between 140 to 199, it is gestational diabetes. 120 to 140, it is gestational glucose intolerance. As less than 120, it is normal. I was going through and there were many studies which has questioned the rationale for not doing this DIPSI test on fasting state. So friends, this is the rationale for non-fasting thing, that adequate and brisk insulin response in normal women maintains the euglycemic state despite glucose challenge. Whereas women with GDM have an increase in glycemic levels with glucose challenge due to impaired insulin secretion. So that is why irrespective of the last meal intake, we are doing one-step DIPSI test. What are the advantages? In our setting, in India, being a vast country, variable population, it is simple, feasible, convenient, economical, and acceptable. In India, women have to travel long distance for checkup and hence this non-fasting single test becomes more acceptable to the pregnant woman. Indian population is diverse and variable, hence international criteria on Indian population may not be practical and feasible. So this is the screening algorithm. You have to do universal screening at first booking according to Government of India and DIPSI guidelines, then at 24 to 28 weeks, this is Government of India and DIPSI guideline, at 32 to 34 weeks as per the DIPSI guidelines. Now, why we have to diagnose and treat the GDM? Because identifying this woman with GDM is very, very important because appropriate therapy can decrease maternal and fetal morbidity. And it can prevent 2 generations from developing diabetes in the future. This is the list of maternal problems which can occur if this woman is diagnosed with GDM, starting from early pregnancy, the risk of spontaneous miscarriage, as pregnancy advances, PIH, then UTI, macrosomia, hydramnios. Intranatal, she can have many problems in terms of macrosomia, instrumental delivery, traumatic delivery, postpartum infection, postpartum hemorrhage, increased maternal mortality, morbidity. Puerperium also, she is more prone for puerperial infections and lactation failure, and long-term complications which we should never forget is In subsequent pregnancy, she is more prone to develop GDM. This is the list of fetal problems which can occur if the mother is having GDM, starting from the stillbirth, neonatal deaths, congenital malformation, shoulder dystocia, respiratory distress syndrome, cardiomyopathy, hypoglycemia, and the list is endless. So now you have diagnosed GDM. What next? So this is the outline. The primary management is dietary changes and exercise. And if it is not controlled with lifestyle changes, then insulin is the first line therapy, followed by the oral agents. The management should go hand in hand with patient education, MNT, that is medical nutrition therapy, pharmacological therapy, antenatal monitoring, fetal monitoring, planning on delivery, and postpartum care. So nutrition counseling is very, very important. The goals for MNT are adequate nutrition, adequate weight gain, prevention of ketosis, and prevention of postprandial hyperglycemia. This is the individualized diet plan based on the level of activity and BMI. This is the diet which, if we are not having nutritionist in our OPD, then as an obstetrician, it is our duty to counsel them on the GDM diet. Physical activity, unless and until it is contraindicated, physical activity should be included in a pregnant woman's daily regimen. Moderate intensity physical activity can help to reduce glucose levels in these women with GDM. This is the weight gain chart which we have to follow if she is having GDM. Insulin initiation, I am sure Anuj has logged in, so he will be discussing more on insulin and the oral therapy. So I will just skip these slides on insulin therapy. Remember, you have to tell your sister to educate patients that these are various insulin injection sites. Many patients, teach them to self-administer the insulin. Now, this is the algorithm. If you are giving insulin therapy, then you have to follow this algorithm. I would like to focus on how to recognize hypoglycemia, because whenever they are on insulin therapy, you have to educate them that early symptoms of hypoglycemia are tremors of hand, sweating, palpitation, hunger, easy fatigability, headache, mood changes, irritability, low attentiveness, tingling sensation around the mouth, lips, or any other abnormal feeling. If it is severe, then she can have confusion, abnormal behavior, or both visual disturbances, nervousness, or anxiety. Seizures and loss of consciousness is uncommon. So how to manage hypoglycemia should be taught to them. You have to ask pregnant woman to take 3 teaspoons of glucose powder dissolved in a glass of water. If glucose is not available, take one of the following, that is sugar, 6 teaspoons in a glass of water, fruit juice, honey, anything which is sweet, which is available. After taking oral glucose, she must take rest and avoid any physical activity. 15 minutes after taking glucose, she must eat 1 chapati with vegetable, rice, milk, anything eatable which is available. If hypoglycemia continues, repeat same amount of glucose and weight. And if pregnant woman develops more than 1 episode of hypoglycemia in a day, she should consult the doctor immediately. Now again, on this, Anuj will highlight on the oral agents. Now how to monitor the blood glucose. At least 4 times self-monitoring, fasting, and 3 1.5 hour postprandial. After achieving target level, lab monitoring till 28 weeks, and lab monitoring should be done once in a month after 28 weeks. 28 to 32 weeks, it has to be once in 2 weeks. After 32 weeks, it has to be once a week. And other parameters which should be monitored are fundus and microalbuminuria. What are the glycemic targets in pregnancy? Mean plasma glucose 105. You have to maintain fasting at 90 and postprandial at 20, and mean plasma glucose should never go below 86. During pregnancy, first trimester, of course, now we all are following that inverted pyramid. You have to focus on 11 to 13 week scan where you can identify most of the problems. Second trimester, Again, anomaly scan, amniotic fluid index, and echo, fetal echo at 22 weeks. Third trimester, again, apart from your routine monitoring, you have to monitor them frequently. Color Doppler as indicated, amniotic fluid index, non-stress test 32 weeks onwards if she is on insulin. Fetal monitoring for fetal growth and liquor volume, and also the weight, fetal weight. When to deliver? This is the FIGO recommendation. Once you have achieved 38 to 39 weeks of pregnancy, if the baby weight is less than 3.8 and she is not giving you any history of poor control, poor compliance, previous stillbirth, vascular disease, then you can continue up to 40 to 41 weeks. But if the baby weight is 3.8 to 4 kg or large for gestational age and these histories are present, then you have to induce labor at 38 to 39 weeks. And if the weight is more than 4 kg, you have to offer elective C-section to these women. Now there has to be special precautions during labor. And again, I am leaving this to Anush to tell our delegates how to give insulin during labor and how to follow these women on insulin during labor. This is just a nutshell. I am telling you that blood sugar level, and this is the amount of insulin and rate of normal saline infusion, and this is how you should manage these women who are on insulin during labor. Intranatal management, in the first stage of labor, you have to admit them, do a CTG partograph, do blood sugar by glucometer 2 hourly, and here your target level is 80 to 120. You have to do continuous fetal monitoring. During second stage, controlled ARM, anticipate shoulder dystocia, and you have to have neonatologist at hand at the time of delivery. Third stage, it has to be active management of the third stage, and you have to watch for traumatic delivery and postpartum hemorrhage. Baby needs immediate care and attention, and early emphasis on breastfeeding is given to prevent the hypoglycemia in this pregnancy. Now, what should be the postpartum care? Because once the delivery is achieved, everyone is busy with the mother and every relative is busy with the baby. So as an obstetrician, we have to take care of this important part, that is immediate postpartum care. If this is a case of GDM managed throughout pregnancy on MNT, then you can stop blood glucose monitoring immediately after delivery, give regular postnatal care, and don't forget to offer OGTT 6 weeks postpartum. If she was a case of GDM who was managed with oral agents, then in most women, glucose tolerance will normalize immediately after delivery. You can stop the drugs after delivery, but continue preprandial blood glucose level monitoring 4 times for first 24 hours. If preprandial level is 72 to 126, you can discontinue monitoring. If it is less than 72 or more than 126, you have to seek medical review and continue monitoring. 1 to 8% may continue to be glucose intolerant and they may need further oral agents to control their sugar level. If this was a case of GDM who was managed on insulin, then you have to do preprandial blood glucose level monitoring 4 times a day for 24 hours. If it is more than 126, you have to do medical review and start oral agents. Usually insulin therapy is not indicated unless there is a marked fast hyperglycemia, that is glucose levels are in the range of 200 to 250. What are the risk factors for persistent diabetes? If the pregnancy fasting glucose levels are greater than or equal to 126, diagnosis of GDM took place during the first trimester, and a prior history of GDM without documented normal glucose tolerance outside of pregnancy. So how to monitor for persistent diabetes? You have to recommend OGTT at 6 weeks postpartum to screen for persistent diabetes, recommend lifelong screening for diabetes every 3 years, and early glucose monitoring in future pregnancy. Breastfeeding, it has to be started as early as possible, and exclusive breastfeeding should be continued for up to 4th month postpartum in order to prevent childhood obesity and diabetes in the offspring. Contraceptive, she is eligible for each and every contraception method which is available unless and until she is having macrovascular disease where the estrogens are contraindicated. Can we prevent GDM? Yes, if you know the risk factors, you can do the nutrition counseling and prevention of excessive gestational weight gain in early pregnancy, ideally before 15 weeks of gestation. So friends, to summarize, we have to give, it has to be a multidisciplinary team approach. If you diagnose GDM in pregnancy, don't take all the burden on yourself. Involve physician, neonatologist in your team, endocrinologist in your team, and you share the burden of managing this case of GDM in pregnancy. Focused attention on achieving glycemic targets, standard preconception care should be augmented with extra focus on nutrition and exercise. Women with pre-existing type 1 or type 2 diabetes who are planning pregnancy or who have become pregnant should be counseled on the risk of development and or progression of diabetic retinopathy. So the take-home messages from my talk is that universal testing for all pregnant women is must. Testing is recommended twice in pregnancy, at first antenatal visit, then at 24 to 28 weeks of gestation. But the DIPSI recommends additional screening at 34 weeks of gestation. We are following single step 75 gram glucose dose 2 hour single test. Pregnant woman testing, if it is more than 140, she should be started or on MNT, and if not controlled with MNT within 2 weeks, then she is for further management. Early delivery with administration of prophylactic corticosteroid therapy for fetal lung maturity to be planned only if there is uncontrolled blood sugar or there is any other obstetric indication. Vaginal delivery is definitely preferred. Cesarean section should be offered only if there is fetal macrosomia or there is any other obstetric indication for advising C-section. Neonatal monitoring should be done for hypoglycemia and other complications. And don't forget the postpartum evaluation of the glycemic status by doing OGTT at 6 weeks after delivery. And don't forget to give her contraception counseling at 12. So friends, pregnant women with GDM and their offspring are at increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes mellitus in later life. So they should be counseled for healthy lifestyle and behavior, particularly role of diet and exercise throughout their life. So this is the usual path forwards. So we have to take care of these women at each and every stage of their life. Friends, thank you so much for your patient hearing. If there are any questions, we will take it after the sessions are over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. And we have Dr. Sunil sir here. So, Dr. Sunil Gupta, as I have already told you, that he is a national president of, he was national president of Diabetes in Pregnancy Study Group India, national treasurer of RRSTI, and have lots of orations and international awards, and have name included also in Guinness Book of World Record. And Dr. Sunil Gupta, we all are familiar of your lectures and all your seen your works dedicated to diabetes. So thank you for coming here in this ICOG Chai Pe Charcha, and I request you to please conclude this session of Dr. Lakshmi Srikhande, madam. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, Dr. Lakshmi Srikhande, for covering the gestational diabetes in such a good nutshell. And I really appreciate the way you have started with the early diagnosis and ended up with even postnatal care. I feel it has been very well summarized. And you have also mentioned about the pharmacotherapy, which is going to be covered by Anuj. The only thing that few of the things which monitoring, when we say it has to be highly individualized, everyone knows. I can just summarize it in such way that that every woman who's coming into the ANC clinic need to be screened for gestational diabetes, irrespective of the gestation, irrespective of the age, irrespective of any of the risk factor. Because we are Indians, we are 11 times at higher risk to have gestational diabetes. One. Second, we should try to screen everyone at the first given opportunity, so that we should not miss out any pre-gestational diabetes, which is becoming increasingly common in our society, and we might end up into trouble in later part if you miss the diagnosis. Third, we have a DIPSI test and Government of India guidelines that you should use 75 gram glucose irrespective of the time of the meal. You should just give the glucose, ask the patient to sit for 2 hours and get the 2-hour test. More than 140, you should certainly diagnose it as gestational diabetes. 120 to 140, you have to be cautious. It could be a borderline case of mild GDM, and which again need to be very closely monitored and maybe kept on diet therapy alone. Last but not the least is every woman should try to achieve their glucose control of fasting 92 hour 120, and though few people are following 1 hour also, it is 140. But traditionally, and DIPSI also don't want to confuse anyone, we just keep very few numbers to be remembered. Fasting 90 and 2 hour postprandial, it should be post breakfast, post lunch, as well as post dinner. That is why she has mentioned 4 points monitoring. But rarely those who are type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, they might require 7 to 8 points monitoring also, depending on their insulin requirement and insulin doses. Those are only on diet therapy. They don't need to monitor blood glucose on a daily basis, but it has to be on a regular basis. We call it a staggering method of monitoring. You can have 1 day fasting, another day you can have post breakfast, third day you can have post lunch, fourth day you can have post dinner. If it is all otherwise well controlled on diet therapy alone, depending, or you can even have twice a week monitoring in such cases. Metformin and insulin and everything is to be covered by Anush, so I'm not going to go for that. But because Uday is sitting here and Preeti Kumar is also sitting here, and Bharti madam is also sitting here, I always have a pleasure of stating one statement without which Uday will not allow me to get out of this screen. And that is what he wants in every lecture of mine, wherever I'm there. Even we were together in Greece, and he said that without that statement of yours, your lecture is incomplete in depth. And that is, we see to it that your blood glucose control should be to the extent that baby doesn't recognize that the mother is diabetes. That is the first step towards prevention of diabetes in the offspring of diabetic mother in their later life and adult life. And that is what is primordial prevention. So diagnose it, control it, and keep following these women even after delivery. Postnatal follow is going to be challenging. And that is again, very important area which we need to discuss. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Bharti madam, for inviting me here and allowing me to meet so many good people here. And again, those who are coming to Hello Diabetes Academia on 9, 10th and 11 June, and those who are attending from this part of the country, Central India, 9th of June, we have the hyperglycemia and pregnancy symposia, which is with the NOGS here. Last time it was with the ICOG, and I invite all of you to please attend this meeting at Nagpur. Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and I feel honored. I'm still here. If you have any question or comments at the end, we have discussion. We will take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and we are really very glad that you have joined us and given your remarks. So now, without doing any delay, and welcome Dr. Uday Thanawala sir is here, Dr. Parag is here, and Dr. Shesha sir of course here. So today's this important webinar on the diabetes is going to be a very interesting. So I now, Dr. V. Shesha sir has already joined. So I invite Dr. Parag Viniwale sir. He is the chairperson of next session to just introduce Dr. V. Shesha sir. So Dr. Parag Viniwale, we all know that he is the senior consultant in the Pune as well as president of Pune OBGY Society 2022-23, vice chairperson ICOG, and president Menopause Society, but I am doing in very short, secretary ICOG, national website editor FOGSI, and had lots of books and publications in his credit. So now I invite sir for next session, chairing next session, and Dr. V. Shesha sir here. So please introduce him.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bharti. I bring greetings from ICOG, the Indian College of OBGYN, And it's an honor to be sitting here chairing session by none other than Professor V. Sheshaya. First of all, let me congratulate Dr. Lakshmi Srikhande, the chairperson and convener Bharati, for a very novel Chai Pe Charcha. And of course, today it has to be without sugar because we are going to talk about diabetes. And when we talk about diabetes in pregnancy, only one name crops up in the minds of everybody, and that is none other than Padma Shri Professor V. Sheshaya. And sir, I'm not going to introduce you formally. I'm just going to say that the obstetrician community is indebted to you for what you have done for our women. And with your guidance and blessings, we are able to diagnose gestational diabetes mellitus in a better way. And I think we all are better equipped to manage our women better. May I request you to start your presentation, please?
Stop share, I must do.
That was very aptly put, Parag. Very well put.
Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. Sheshya, sir, only on message you have just say yes, and you are here. We are really very much eager to listen you and thankful to you.
No screen visible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm very happy to participate in this high-end and highly high people who have done lots of work in gynaecology. I really thank Bharati Maheshwari, sister of my friend, my Anuj Maheshwari. I immediately accepted when she called. I never asked when and where. I searched, I know her. So I said, I'll come. Now I had a beautiful lecture, previous speaker, beautiful, everything covered very well. And Sunil gave his own comment. Now I'm going to take on a very important topic for me. I don't know about you people, but it is going to be a little more time because I don't know. This is a little bit new. So this I'm going to speak on Make in India. The first time I'm introducing in the country for the past 1 year. I'm speaking in a number of places, but I'm very happy to address this. Uday Tanawala is there, whom I know him very well, so many years. I call one of the UAE and Hema, I know them very well when they came to Dipsy in Chennai. Now, this very important topic because my concept now, last year suddenly it occurred to me, we are taking all things that nobody thought about how to prevent diabetes. Prevent diabetes is possible, but I thought about primordial prevention diabetes possible. In the concept,
Just make it full screen for sir.
Full screen. I'm also asking him. I don't know.
Make it full screen. Great, great.
Yeah, this is now the title is so huge. I have to cover these both three: embryology, endocrinology, and endorsed drug for this topic of primordial prevention of diabetes. But many people ask what do you mean by primordial? I will explain you now here. Organizing camp for detection of diabetes does not mean prevention of diabetes. It is entirely different. And then again also, what we need is primordial prevention of diabetes. That means that the disease should not develop. So that is the theme of this talk. Diabetes should not all come at all. Even GDM we can prevent by this, what I am telling now. Now let me go a little bit in history. What steps can be taken for primordial prevention of diabetes? Now, what is the evidence? Now, Diabetes Prevention Program of the United States in September 2001, very advanced country, the Centers for Diabetes Control and Prevention CDC issued a press release stating that twin epidemics of diabetes and obesity continue to threaten the health of Americans. Of course, everybody is involved. And Diabetes Prevention Program was introduced. Now, the problem here will be such Americans also failed 2001. Now, what happened in the followed up? It was 6.1% of the US population had diagnosed with diabetes. Currently, in 2010, doubled. So, their method of methodology to prevent diabetes and diabetes control is a total failure. So what we should do now? Obviously, this is not a successful program. Then what could be the successful program? I will show here. Is it possible to achieve diabetes-free generation? Whom to focus? This is a question I'm going to ask and I'm going to answer also. Now, it is very important now that OBGYN has come here. So many people are here now. Please, this topic is known as female gender is the key for diabetes prevention. So if you want to prevent diabetes, you have to take care of the female gender. I have very great respect for the OBGYN because they only can do this problem solved. Here, how? This is a very important slide for us. Developmental origin of the ovum is well supplied with the mitochondria. The sperm contains a few, even those few do not persist in the offspring. So male role is very, very simple, not big. Now what happens here? At fertilization, it is only the nucleus of the spermatozoa that enters the ovum. Thus, all the cytoplasm, mitochondrial DNA are exclusively maternally oriented. That's what important. So, mother is very important than the father here. The father is necessary, but mother is very important. So, now we'll go to another angle. David Barker said about a few years ago that the body's susceptibility to lifestyle disease was programmed intrauterine. Beautiful statement he made, everything in the uterus. So what happened? What next step will be here? What is the intrauterine programming? The gestational programming is a process whereby stimuli, maternal fuels, or stresses trigger at critical sensitive period of fetal development, permanently change structure, physiology, metabolism, predispose individuals to at least other life. So that is this is the crux of the problem. What I am saying now, that is why what we call this fetal origin water diseases. So you made a very simple statement. The whole thing is due to the everything starts with the mother's womb, fetal origin. So again, one more point I would like to share with you. Diabetes, what we think about that, it is innate destiny. People say my father diabetes, my grandfather diabetes. Okay, is it innate destiny or due to genetics? Now you look at this interactive environment. What is more important for development diabetes mellitus? If I'll discuss here few slides. Exposure to a diabetic environment in utero, associated with increased occurrence of impaired glucose tolerance, defective insulin cycle response in adult offspring, independent of the genetic predisposition to diabetes. That means genetic doesn't much play from this statement on this side. Now we'll look at it. And this is what the previous slide showed is very correct. Animal experiment model here, Mr. Rat, the low genetic risk of diabetes when exposed to hyperglycemic media of goat rat at utero, what could happen? They significantly increase the risk of diabetes in adult life. So no genetic, but just because in the uterus of the goat rat, which is highly hyperglycemic, will develop diabetes. That's so uterus is very, very important. And then animal. Now look at the human beings. The offspring of Pima Indians who were in utero, their mother had gestational diabetes mellitus, have a greater risk of developing diabetes than earlier siblings born before the mother developed GDM. So these two, the animal and human being showed the intrauterine milieu is more important than innate destiny. So that this particular point I convinced you, intrauterine milieu is very important. Now when I proceed further, hyperglycemic pregnancy, GDM is defined as any degree of glucose tolerance with onset or first candidate during pregnancy. Gestational diabetes mellitus may play a crucial role in the increasing prevalence of diabetes and obesity. And also finally, insulin resistance, increased atherogenic lipid profile, inflammatory markers, hypertension, endothelial dysfunction lead to decreased risk of cardiovascular diseases. That is why I called GDM is the mother of non-communicable diseases. So all attempt is to focus. Women should not develop GDM. How is it possible? I will discuss now. Detection, that is diagnosed GDM is possible. Just do one test. As somebody spoke earlier, doctor, 140 and above GDM. But what we want here is what we're concerned is prediction of GDM. Which lady is going to develop GDM? That if we know that, then what we can do, we can also do this so that we can prevent development of GDM and its consequences. That is where I'm going to start my talk now. Now our aim is to not only prediction but also prevention. For that we need the prediction. Now when to test to predict GDM? The very important argument now I'm going to make now here. Fortunately, on 2018, a blood test may identify gestational diabetes risk in first trimester. This is a brutal statement, but what happened is the National Institute of Health analysts suggest early screening will allow for lifestyle changes before condition develops. When and where they are not mentioned here. Now, they just said, National Institute just suggested a 10th week blood test must be done to know whether that woman is going to develop GDM or not. So, what a beautiful statement. Why is it 10th week is next question I want to answer. Now here, as I told you, embryology. Embryology fetus development very important. That's why 10th week is important. You will see here in this slide, each islet cell functions as endocrine organ. Embryology, as a title of cell, now it's the endocrine. So an endocrine organ, and that is why in human pancreas it begins to develop 4 weeks after conception. And the first insulin deposit can be found, but in week 7 and 8. Pancreatic islet differentiates at this is a crucial point. Pancreatic islets differentiate at 10th week or around the 11th week of gestation. Recognizes and responds to maternal glycemia at 11th week gestation. That means fetus is growing in the uterus, can recognize maternal glucose at 10th week itself, and even responds to maternal glucose by secreting insulin at 11th week. So the 10th and 11th week are very
हेलो
मैम आई थिंक सर का कनेक्शन चला गया नेट का।
हाँ सर का कनेक्शन चला गया है, बराबर है, शायद वो रीलॉग इन करेंगे फिर से।
यस मैम।
Uday wants to say something. Uday?
No, this is just, it's a concept which sir has developed for prevention or prediction of GDM. So we don't have to get confused here. You know, the GDM guidelines remain what it is. We are doing the single step test to diagnose GDM, and if it is above 140, we label as GDM. What sir is saying is a very different thing. It's a new concept which we are going to try out, and we're going to do different studies on it. And then we will commission whether it is possible to predict the women who will develop GDM. So there's a big difference. So all those students or other people who are listening should not get confused with this. But it's a very important concept which sir has got about, because the islet cells of pancreas start working at 10 weeks in the fetus, and they can give us some changes which sir will elaborate. And that we can get some idea that could this particular woman become a GDM.
Yeah, sir has logged in again. Yeah, sir, please start your screen share.
Dr. Sheshaya, you're muted. You can unmute yourself and speak to us.
जिग्नेश फिर से co-host करो उनको.
मैम किया हुआ है मैंने।
Sunil would like to add anything on this concept which sir has come about for in the meantime. So, prediction of GDM, the new thing which sir is
it's a novel concept and thought-provoking thing, but I feel we need to have good number of research and good quality research here. How that is why sir wanted to actually stimulate all of us to go into these lines so that we can do some good research work across the country, multi-centric trial, and come out with some data from this part of the world, and possibly will be of its own kind globally when we talk about such thought process. So all of us who are working in the field of pregnancy diabetes are really excited to get this particular insight, which is going to be a kind of a thought process of with the hypothesis that if you want to have the diabetes-free India after 25 years, by the time we'll be completing 100 years of independence. So by that time, if we can call ourselves free of diabetes, I feel that is what the foresight of Professor Shea sir is. And on these lines, he's started this this mega project, and we are all working. I feel various centers are doing some research work, some basic work on these lines, and maybe after some 2 or 3 years or so, we will come out with good publication on these lines. Over to Dr. Shea sir.
So as yet, it's
sir, you are muted, sir.
Stage. We don't have to get confuse this test with the regular guidelines which we
Yes.
have.
Our regular guidelines are as it is, as what Dr. Uday Thanawala said. We have to follow as a clinician. We have to just follow the Government of India guidelines and DIPSI guidelines, FOGSI guidelines, ICOG guidelines, all those guidelines which have actually proposed with the screening program, the management, everything remains the same. But in future, it's just a food for thought for all of us.
Screen we can't see. The person who is helping, sir, please.
Now you can see.
So we can see.
Yes, sir.
We can see you, sir.
We can
but
hear
need
you,
to
sir,
see your-
and we can see you, sir. Sir, we can
Okay.
do it, please.
Can't see his screen.
This is of course a new ideas, but fact. I think it's imagination. It's a fact. Fasting blood sugar normally it has been published data is about 2011 itself. I have also done that work. 71 plus or minus 8, and the previous speaker also told about fasting in the 90, but it should be 80 also. The most important with this is not post-glucose, postprandial. See, like DIPSI guidelines, we make it very, very simple. This author also is made very simple. 2 hour postprandial will be should be less than 110, not more than that. So this value is very, very important for us to go further in the prevention of diabetes. Now, any value of normal, that's abnormal. I have already quoted this word somewhere in diabetes care. Any value above normal is abnormal. More than 110 is abnormal. You can't have grace. Say no 110, 100 like that. No, not this. 110 means 110. This is like Lakshman Rekha. You can't cross 110. Now, glycemic level at gestational weeks for prediction of GD, but what level, at what weeks? Now, as I told you earlier, said a blood test conducted as well as the 10th week of pregnancy may help identify women at risk of for gestational diabetes. So at higher AMS levels, another 5.3, but compared to those without gestational diabetes, but in this slide you see an average of 5.3% or 110 milligrams.
Sir, we can't see your slides. You need to do screen share and show us the slides.
Not able to see.
No, we can't.
No, we can't see the slides, sir.
Why, ma? What happened?
We can't see your slides.
Oh. Now?
No, sir.
Not yet.
What happened? Yeah, I don't know. Oh.
Yeah, it is coming.
I don't get it. Now you're able to see.
It is coming. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, ma. Okay, thank you. Anyway, the first time National Institute of Health Study in 2008 suggested, I told you previously also, A1C 5.3, otherwise 2 or PPG more than 110 milligram at 10th week predicts GDM. So this is very, very important message what we got from this only. I proceed further. Now next point will be here. This is another important point. See, but so far, no explanation till today. So far, no explanation has been given for prediction as well as prevention of GDM. Prediction almost given, but no how to exactly predict what value, and then as well as prevention of GDM. But at one point we know 10th week predicts GDM with more than 110 milligrams. So these 2 points are very important. Now I'll proceed further. So what my conception was, maternal 2 personal blood sugar should not cross 110 milligram per deciliter at 10th week, as fetal beta cells start secreting insulin around 11th week of pregnancy. So this is the crux of all the maternal blood sugar should not cross 110 because 10th week, 11th week, if it comes to 11th week to the mother, to the fetal starts secreting insulin. When it starts secreting, problem starts. Now I will discuss in the further slide how it goes on. So scope for prediction of GDM, postnal blood sugar at 10th week more than 10 milligram predict GDM, that I told you earlier. Yes, blood glucose has to be brought to less than 110 milligram as fetal beta cells start secreting insulin around 10th 11th week. So this is the message. Now what further, the fetal insulin secretion changes maternal blood volume starts. So this is a vicious cycle of maternal glucose. Now, fetal hyperinsulinemia is more important and maternal hyperglycemia. The obvious implication is that glycemic control needs to be optimized very early in pregnancy to prevent the establishment of fetal hyperinsulinemia. Now, we have been talking all the time, 24th week, somewhere you can do diagnosis. But now, entirely different concept. The obvious implication that glycemic control needs to be optimized very early in pregnancy to prevent the establishment of fetal hyperinsulinemia. That's because this fetal hyperinsulinemia is very dangerous. That should not occur. So always PPBS should be less than 10 milligram in the mother all the time. So now I'm going to do different angle. Fetal handling of maternal glucose, which is not very well discussed. I will discuss here. Fetal handling of maternal glucose. I will give an example here. This will make it clear. Fixed and postnal blood glucose. 10th week, imagine 10th week blood sugar level in the mother is 126. And then what happens if you do the blood sugar at the 12th week, all of us will be very happy. It has come down to 110. Any physician or OBGYN will be happy to see the mother. Oh, 10th week it was so high. Now it has come to 112. PPBS comes down without any intervention. We are very happy. But this is not happy news. It is not a happy thing to happen. What has happened here, that is what we are missing so many years. Now what happened? How it is possible? You can look at this. 11th week, what had happened in between 1 week, secretion of fetal insulin secretion start. This brings down maternal glucose. Unfortunately, this is what we have been keeping blind. 126 came to 112, and this is possible not because of our effort or mother's effort. It is because fetal effort of our mother, that fetus secretes insulin at 11th week. So it was able to bring down blood sugar of the mother to 112. So we will ignore that, but that is what the problem. So maternal blood glucose does not go up due to fetal insulin handling of maternal glucose. When maternal PP is more than 100 milligrams recorded, immediate action has been taken to bring PPS less than 110 milligrams, lest she will develop GDM and its consequences. That is a very important message. When you teach a woman, be very careful of this blood sugar coming down on her own. Now, this is another angle of physiology here, endocrinology, contribution to glucose gradient. Now, mother plus M is the mother, F is fetus. Glucose in the mother's side, it goes up. What happens in the physiology here will be glucose goes into the fetal compartment. maternal hyperglycemia pushes glucose into the fetus. Fetus, what it does, it's the insulin secretion goes up, and then glucose, insulin, when fetus become adiposity, fat. So, and fetal insulin pulls glucose. So this is what happened. Now, what are the mechanism in the placenta? Poor glycemic control early in pregnancy will result in the establishment of fetal hyperinsulinemia, causing exaggerated fetal glucose steal. That's called steal. Fetal glucose, fetus steals glucose from the mother. So as a consequence, the overactive glucose steal will increase the disposal of maternal glucose into the fetus, thus attenuating the levels of maternal. That's what you have seen in the previous slide. Thus attenuating the levels of maternal hyperglycemia. And further, importantly, the effect of lowering maternal glucose driving by the fetus will be greatest in pregnancies, the most hyperglycemic fetuses. So we all miss blood glucose in the mother. So finally, the priming of beta cell mass, beta cells may account for the persistence of fetal hyperinsulinemia throughout pregnancy. Once this is another important message. Once 11th week it starts secreting insulin and seeing the mother's blood sugar crossing 110, that's all. No, whatever you do, nothing will happen. It goes on, and the insulin will persist in the fetus throughout pregnancy. That the consequence will be, I will come in the next slide. Here, guidelines to screen glucose tolerance at appropriate gestation weeks. Now you'll see here, 10th week, 11th week, like that. Now imagine at 20th week onwards, you all know tumor necrosis factor A, alpha, lactogen, progesterone, leptin, all these hormones which are naturally occurs in the fetus, in the mother. This insulin starts due to hormone changes. There is nothing to have with physiology. Insulin still starts. This insulin resistance is not dangerous. Most of us think pregnancy is insulin resistant. It is necessary because here I will tell you here, insulin resistance physiologically plays a key role here, bring out the changes in carbohydrate, lipids, and amino acid metabolism that facilitates anabolism, nutrition to the fetus. Insulin resistance is not harmful until resistance is physiological. So that is the reason why God has given so many hormones for the fetus. Now, following the next step will be now, I'll give you an example here. Glucose, you'll see in the blue line, everything is normal. 76 to 80, where insulin level you will see here from 12.3, it goes up to 27. This is because with all this insulin secretion has to go to control the blood sugar. Progressively increased insulin elaboration enables it to maintain plasma glucose level. That is the physiological angle. Other you can call endocrinology also. Now, next step will be here. This is what happened. 28th week is over. 28th, the usual recommendation for screening, none of us, most of us in the textbook, 24th week, they said first appearance at 24th. No, I will say one or to be screened. So usual recommendation for screening 28th week. What should have happened here? 10th week, I told you, postmortem blood sugar more than 110 milligram. What could happen in 11th week? Fetal insulin, fetal blood cell secretion starts. So because of this, it's not physiological, it's pathological. Because of that, what could happen? None of us do the test. Presently, none of us recommend anywhere in the book so far. Presently, to test for the glucose tolerance at 10th week is not yet followed. So I'm happy that audience sitting here, you will think about this. Not 24th week screening should start at the 10th week itself. That is not enough. 10th week I'm telling here, but I want to change my attitude further. So, hence, maternal hyperglycemia and fetal hyperinsulinemia promote fetal adiposity. Results in the offsprings will be, if it is a male child, obesity, IGT, diabetes. If it is a female child, it will become a GDM, and that this is a vicious cycle going to happen. That's what happening so far in the world. It's happening. I don't know when this world is going to change. That percent, this is what is happening. Now, phenomena of anticipation. Now I'm going to come to you. What is my imagination? Not imagine. What I'm telling, phenomenon of anticipation will be here. Ideal is to test. Now it is like example, student going to exam in the month of June. If it prepares only in the month of May, chance are they may not pass, may fail also. But we must have enough time to prepare in the, for example, like that. Ideally, test for glucose tolerance at 8th week. That means 2 months. Why? Why 8th week? 10th week, 11th week I've been telling so far. Now suddenly I'm coming back to 8th week. This 8th week is nothing to do. This 8th week gives us, we have done all the studies. Prediction of GD is 2 or PPG more under at 10th week. That we all discussed so far. Now, another point will be here. Yes, at the 8th week itself, you prepare yourself. 8th week itself, personal blood sugar has to be estimated. So that, because in case if PPB is more than 110 milligram at 8th week, a grace period 2 weeks is available to attain PPBs less than 110 milligram at 10th week. So you have got enough time, that 2 weeks time to manage, bring it down. If it is more than 110, bring it down 110 by methods which I will discuss further. So this is what called phenomenon of anticipation. 8th week itself, that is why we are everywhere I'm telling about 8th week you do the blood test the second month. Now again example here. So weeks in 8th week, if you see the blood sugar more than 110 milligram, in case if the woman comes 10 milligram, intervention should be either MMT and as possible metformin. Now fortunately, government of Tamil Nadu has given ethical clearance for using metformin in the mother when their blood sugar crosses 110. It is given. Ethical committee has approved. So we are going to use that. We are already using it. So when you go to 10th week, it comes to, because 2 weeks you used in metformin, you brought it down to less than 110, which was more than 110. 8th week it come to 10th week and less than 110. So grace period 2 weeks was given us the chance or opportunity to bring down to blood sugar level at 10th week, so that nothing will happen to the mother. 11th week also will be the same. There won't be no more of insulin from the mother. So no increased fetal beta cell increase rate occurs. As a consequence, there won't be any problem in the mother. So suppose 10th week only you do the test. You ask the woman to come 10th week and do the blood sugar. It may be, I'll say 110 milligram. It may go up more than 110 milligram. So you have missed the opportunity. So not enough time is available to achieve less than 110 milligrams if you do only 10th week. So you cannot prevent what we are imagining now. So 8th week you do the blood test and control it. You all the time, 10th week, every time it will be normal. So not enough time is available to achieve 110 milligram. So fetal beta cells secretary starts increasing. That is what is happening now. So if we treat early itself, you can avoid that. So now I'm coming to the drug to be used. So this is again embryology here. It's a very interesting topic here. If you see the 8th week, embryology is over. So no one need not fear, oh, I don't want to give a drug. You see 8th week embryological stage, then fetal stage. Now because of this embryonic stage, over by 8th week. So that is why we are suggesting, as the ethical committee also approved, it is not going to be harmful to the fetus, because by the time embryonic, all the organs have been developed. The one, if more than 110 milligram MNT and metformin 250 milligram BD started and continued, target clustering to be obtained will be here. The very important personal blood sugar 99 plus or minus 10. Metformin is safe as embryonic stage is over by 8th week. And then to use metformin as an adjunct or alternative to insulin in the preconception period and during pregnancy also, when the likely benefit from improved blood glucose control outweigh the potential for harm. There is nice guide, National Institute of Clinical Excellence of the UK. Now what happened lately, metformin is safe for use throughout pregnancy. Glucophage, that is metformin, was approved as the first oral anti-diabetic medication to be used safely from conception to birth. Safe. Lower risk pregnancy induced hypertension and pressure. That these two studies have shown metformin is absolutely safe for the fetus development. The metformin pregnancy not tied to growth difference at 2 years. This latest guidelines. Study the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology also showed no difference in weight, height, circumference, and voice circumference between children of metformin treated and placebo treated mother. So all the studies have shown is absolutely safer drug for the use in the fetus. So one warning, whatever you do, you should do it before 10th week. Suppose you take 12th week, administration of metformin or 12th week will not be effective in preventing GDM. Whatever you do on 12th week, that's why this very important period will be 10th to 11th week must be on 10th. 12th week after all, first trimester, in last week. But we give, this is published data, no point in giving metformin at 12th week. So finally, score for prevention of GDM, PPBS more than 100 milligram at 10th week is the crucial time, the pregnancy to prediction of GDM, prediction year. And then for prevention, intervention has to be started at the 8th week itself, because fetal beta cell do not start insulin secretion at the 8th week, embryonic stage, and metformin is safe. Now finally, just over, now categorization of glucose tolerance during pregnancy, prediction and detection. Now prediction of all of you know about GDM, 2 or 140 milligram, future type diabetes, and the just next thing is not very much. Sunil Gupta knows about that. DJ, gestational glucose intolerance, not DGA. Now we call DGA, gestational glucose intolerance. 2 or PG 140 or 1 to 140, advancement is outcome, but they don't become diabetic. And finally, we call this early gestational glucose intolerance, EGI, 10th week, very important. 2 person among 100 milligram, prone to develop GDM and diabetes. That is the most important level for women to develop GDM will be 2 hour postprandial blood sugar 110 at the 10th week. So you must anticipate, and from 8th week itself start managing with medicines. The consequence of GDM, this is very important for why should you not only diabetes, this could happen. A study published AOGA suggests that women overweight or obese during pregnancy may be more likely to have infertile sons. Research says that maternal hypovolemia may be tied to hormones imbalance that affects the development of male offspring's reproductive system. So as unfortunate, mother happens with GDM, that this is what happened. So the study which included 9,000 men and women aged 31 and 34 found that sons born to overweight mothers were 40% more likely to be infertile than those born to mothers of normal weight. So how, it's pitiable. Varying impact of gestational diabetes and incidence of childhood cancers high in the children born to GDM people. Glucose tolerance during pregnancy and neurodevelopment disorders, again, a very dangerous thing happened. A recent study has revealed association between maternal diabetes during pregnancy and increased risk of some neurodevelopmental disorders. Neurodevelopment conditions include attention deficit syndrome, autism, intellectual disability. See what are the complications the child is going to develop because the mother had GDM. So GDM should be somehow you must see one doesn't develop GDM. So high blood glucose pregnancy is tied to elevated BP in offspring. So what poor child. In general, studies showed increased danger of high blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure in offspring born to mothers with general hyperlipidemia pregnancy. The study finding published in Diabetology. So this so many problems occur to the child born to the mother who had GDM. So conclusion will be here. She ends. Female gender, as I told you earlier, the key to anxiety prevention starts with a healthy pregnancy, low birth weight, a large birth weight, leads on to elevated risk factor for the obesity, diabetes, hypertension, all these ancient diseases, intergenetic transfer of risk occurs. So the link to the NSAID. So this is the only general suggestion. The prevention of the NSAID will be preventive should start during intrauterine period and continue throughout life from early childhood. So this message shows intrauterine is very, very important. Prevention of type diabetes must begin in vitro and continue throughout the life course. So we also published this paper in the prediction and prevention of of the gestational diabetes and its sequelae by administering metformin in early pregnancy. It was approved and given to the publication. Now, probably we'll try to do in ICMR to study what we can do. Now, friends, this final slide, the womb is more important than the home. So nothing you can do home, it has to be in mother's womb. So it all starts in utero, ends for diabetes-free generation, focus on the fetus for the future. So aim to maintain maternal glucose 99 plus or minus 10 throughout pregnancy. I'm just giving an idea here. So from conception to confinement, all this time, please see that the maternal blood sugar varies between 99 and 109, that is 110. If this occurs throughout this value from the conception to delivery, that mother will not become GDM, a child also will not become diabetic. So prevents transgeneration transmission occurs of diabetes is possible by this concept. This is what we call concept. Now, carry on message, pre-pregnancy planning is ideal for a better fetal outcome. It is necessary to obtain metabolic control early in pregnancy. So, and then again further, prediction, GDM, conclusion, prediction of GDM more than 10th 10th week, and then preventive action has to be taken the 8th week, so that maternal glucose remains less than 10th throughout pregnancy. And further, MNT, nutrition therapy, is very, very important, as previous speaker told. And finally, MNT metformin to be continued till you do not worry about the metformin at all. They can continue till that delivery, so nothing will happen. Better thing will happen. She will not become GDM, and child will not become diabetic. As I told the previous slide, the priming of beta cell around 11th week may account for the persistence of fetal hypertensinemia throughout pregnancy. It is published data. So where it starts, where it's going to end. So it's such a difficult problem now they're going to face in the pregnancy. So as Sunil was telling in the now, this Make in India concept for primordial prevention of diabetes is evidence-based, feasible, and doable. I still back in there because no other country has taken up what I am suggesting now. That's why I said I believe in my Prime Minister. He said everything make in India. This is make in India. Hope to achieve diabetes-free generation by 2047. That is 100 years. Should be country was free in 1947. People should be free from diabetes by 2047, if not earlier. That is what our minister told in the conference. Hence, please let us all pledge for primordial prevention of diabetes, and I'm sure all countries' health in the hands of OBGYN. Please, that you must take, all of you must be interested in the particular subject to take care of the woman, and so that she will not become diabetic, a child will not diabetic. The prevention of diabetes is possible. Thank you very much for giving me enough time to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Parag,
thank
sir,
you.
yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a thought-provoking lecture. I'm sure in the years to come, we obstetricians will fall in love with this concept again, the way we fell in love with the DIPSI criteria many years ago. And I'm sure leaders like Hema, Uday, and Sujata, who did original work along with you, Dr. Anjala.
There are 3 musketeers. I call them 3 musketeers.
So they will see to it that all FOGSians are charged too, because this is going to be a great challenge for all of us in the years to come. And I think this is something which we all should look at very, very seriously in order to have a better generation. There are a couple of questions, but I think those questions we will keep them reserved, because they I think one of them talks about metformin. So Dr. Anuj can take it, sir. There's one question whether 75-gram glucose is used or only postprandial glucose.
Postprandial. I make life simple. The Lakshmi was telling about 70 gram. It is true, but we are progressing now from 70 gram. Any meal is okay, but particularly as Sunil told, most important time to do the blood test after the breakfast. Because usually breakfast sugar is high compared to lunch. So that 2 hour postprandial blood sugar because women need not take glucose. We were unless waiting for the OP department. So I see our concept as simple as possible, at the same physiological. That is that slide I told you. Nobody would have showed that slide. So the slide I showed, PPBS is very important, 110. So anyways, from now, probably 2-3 years, all our concept will change, and probably we can spread this information. And I must thank again Bharati Maheshwari.
Thank you.
I was not talking many months, but you called and then I called. I said, okay, I'll come. But fortunately, you made me talk from home. I may not be able to come directly and talk. Not possible.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think Dr. Uday wants to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That was an excellent talk as usual. But let me just clarify what Parag said. And this is Dr. Nipun Shivsagar and Dr. Debanjanti's question after your talk, whether 75 gram glucose is used or PP glucose. Now, please differentiate here. We are talking about primordial prevention, is predicting of GDM, not diagnosing GDM. So for prediction, what sir has said is postprandial glucose. And for preventing GDM, you may use metformin if your PLBS at 8 weeks comes high. But that concept is now as yet it has yet to come into the guidelines. When we talk of GDM, when we talk of diagnosing GDM, we use the 75 grams glucose to our reading. That is the DIPSI test, which is being recommended by all the guidelines. So we don't give up that test at all
you don't give it.
for diagnosing GDM. No, so the chat box questions have come up after your talk. So people are now getting confused whether to do a postprandial or to do a 75 GCT. So a DIPSI test is recommended to diagnose GDM. And we have to do it in the first time when the woman comes to us in the first trimester, and then repeat it at 24, 26 weeks. That doesn't change. And metformin for prevention is only what sir is talking about, metformin, and what sir is talking about prevention and prediction of GDM. Prediction of GDM is a different thing rather than diagnosing it over there. So sir has brought up a very important concept, that why one can possibly even predict which woman will develop GDM. And that yet has to come into the guidelines, that yet has to come into force, yet studies are required, yet meta-analysis are required and all. But it's a very important concept. So as far as GDM guidelines are concerned, don't get confused. To diagnose GDM, we are still at the DIPSI test, which we have started doing, and everybody is doing uniformly, to our glucose reading after 75 grams of glucose. And if it is above 140, we diagnose and treat as
We'll continue as it is. This what I'm saying is a concept. It may take 2 or 3 years. Probably Uday Tanawala will be able to find out what is happening. We can publish it also. Probably I am not able, I had some data on that. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. It works so well.
It's an excellent idea, sir. And if it comes into force, it will be let's just work towards it. That's a great deliberation.
Next SciDip conference. By the time I'll be ready with the data, so that still I'm telling all people can't follow what we are talking now. Till that time, as Meena Lakshmi told, we will continue as it is. But few of us who are all very much knowing what's happening, you must go into this lane. Otherwise, whole country cannot be. If we all look, I'm sure by I don't know when it's going to happen. 2047, as I told in the Chandra Singh, 100 years, country, our India should be free, definitely free. If you follow, I have a faith in the concept.
Thank you, sir. Uday, I think 2 years down the line, when I'll be the chairman of ICOG, we'll sit here again, listening to Professor Sheshaya. We'll have comments from Sunil and Preeti and everybody. And then probably we'll be in a better position to take this point further and give it to our population at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
To me. I'm very happy to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Repeatedly, I must go on talking what to do. Thank you very much.
Bharti, let's invite. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really very pleasant session by Dr. Sesha sir. And now we have a next session, and that is also very interesting. And so that we invite a chairperson for next session, and that is none other than our own Dr. Uday Thanawala. We all know that how much he is contributed for diabetes in pregnancy. And so, sir, Dr. Uday Thanewala, we all know that he needs no introduction as a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at Navi Mumbai, chairperson ICOG 2021 to 22, vice president FOGSI 2015, treasurer PCOS Society of India, chairperson medical disorder of pregnancy committee of FOGSI, founder secretary and past president of Navi Mumbai Option Gynae Society, joint secretary FOGSI, and had lots of gold medals and publications in his credit. So now to Dr. Uday Thanewala sir for next session. Dr. Uday Thanewala, yeah.
Thank you so much. And here I invite Dr. Anuj Maheshwari, because what has happened is, with the whole study of GDM coming into force, I think we obstetricians and endocrinologists have come so close together, and it is so nice that now we are on the same track and, you know, advising our patients exactly the same things. Because remember that once you diagnose a patient of GDM, it is important to sit down and counsel her and tell her that if you've got abnormal sugars, such things will happen to your fetus, so better take care of your sugars. 90% will be controlled on diet and exercise, but 10% will require pharmacotherapy. So here we have Dr. Anuj Maheshwari, who is a DNB teacher and PhD. He has presented a number of papers in the international and national floras. In fact, I think he was traveling hell of a lot last month, because he went to the United States of America, then he came to Greece to be with the DIP conference with us, and then he was onward to Delhi for yet another meeting. So he's a very active international figure. He's got the R.J. Wingerman Oration by the Indian Society of Hypertension in 2015. He's been awarded the B.C. Bansal Oration in the annual conference, and a lot of other orations which he has taken. He is a recipient of the 2016 Notable Achievement Award in Hypertension Prevention and Control of Population. And with all that things, I mean, what I know about Anuj is he's an excellent speaker and a very down-to-earth person who will give you a proper down-to-earth presentation on what pharmacology, how to include it on metformin. And let me start with this question which has come in the chat box. Sir, if it is 8-week PLBS is more than 110, like Dr. Shishaya said, and we start metformin, and it gets controlled, should we continue it throughout pregnancy without any further testing at 24 to 28 weeks? And everything about metformin. Over to you, Anuj.
Thank you, Dr. Uday Thanewala. Still, the memories are very fresh of greasing together, and you really missed my talk there. That's why Bharti has organized here. So I shall be taking you on my slides. I'm just going to share my slides. So I must pay my gratitude to my two very important teachers who taught me medicine, who taught me diabetes, and Dr. Sheshia, who taught me gestational diabetes. Whatever I know about the gestational diabetes, it is all credit goes to Professor Sheshia, and I am associated with him for last 17 years, 2006. Continuously, I am going into the DIPSI and sharing my ideas and thoughts with him, and he's getting his blessings as well as his guidance. So the pharmacotherapy in hyperglycemia and pregnancy is the topic of the day. I shall be taking you to a tour on how can we give the medications during the pregnancy, maybe related for the management of hyperglycemia. Everybody understands that goal for the pregnancy in hyperglycemia remains that we always try to enhance the perinatal outcome. But in addition to the enhancing perinatal outcome, the ultimate aim is to remain there, preventing any enduring effects on both mother and the fetus. Professor Sheshia has taken a wonderful talk on the primordial prevention, which gives us an idea not only to protect mother from the forthcoming type 2 diabetes, but also to forthcoming child and forthcoming time of the nation. We can stop our nation to becoming the world capital of diabetes if we follow those what Dr. Shishya has guided us. I'm very happy that all the organizations in the world has at least come to the consensus for the glycemic targets. 10 years before, the situation was very different. ADA was saying something, ACOG was saying another thing, ACOG in the pre-gestational was giving some other recommendations, ACE was having another recommendation, and NICE was going on another way. But you can see here now, all organizations are almost at the consensus as far as the glycemic targets in pregnancy are concerned. And IFSI has played a very big role in making them all them to the consensus. But still, it is one step ahead, where you can see it here. All other organizations are maintaining their difference in fasting plasma glucose, and they are sometimes they are suggesting 95, 95, 96. But TIPSI is suggesting the lowest level of the fasting plasma glucose with the 2 hours postprandial glucose for the target 120. TIPSI suggests for the diagnosis 140 milligram per deciliter is enough, but if you need to control, then 120 milligram per deciliter is required after 2 hours of the 75 gram glucose. Let's come on to the medical management. But if I directly come on the medical management without talking about the medical nutrition therapy, probably it would be the gross injustice. For any treatment, if we are going to have in pregnancy for hyperglycemia, obviously our first aim shall remain there to control blood glucose. But at the same time, it is not only the number of the glucose which we want to bring down, but complications prevention is our ultimate goal. And at the same time, when we are dealing with the pregnancy, then good outcome of the pregnancy with the healthy mother and healthy child is very important aim for our medical management. So whenever the pharmacological therapy is to be intended, it is important to achieve good glycemic control. We must try MNT for at least 2 weeks if we have diagnosed the hyperglycemia in pregnancy in first and second trimester. But if it is little delayed, if it has come little delayed, or we could diagnose it delayed in the third trimester, then we cannot give more than 1 week trial for the medical nutrition therapy. But medical nutrition therapy, as Dr. Uday Khanewala has very rightly said, gives wonderful results in gestational diabetes, pure gestational diabetes. If we do not get any hidden pre-GDM is there, then medical nutrition therapy gives control in 90% to 95% individuals. As far as the oral anti-diabetic drugs are concerned, obviously, a few years before they were strictly forbidden, but nowadays they have been allowed. But ideal oral anti-diabetic drug is still we are searching, which do not cross the placenta. And at the same time, if it crosses, it should not cause any fetal harm in the form of the hypoglycemia, hyperinsulinemia, and teratogenic effects. Dr. Shishya has talked about hyperinsulinemia after the 11th week of the pregnancy, which is commonly seen in the mother. If we can really stop that, we can stop multiple complications. So if we really want to choose the therapy to be used in pregnancy, we should always be remembering all these things. Let's talk about the recommendations for the treatment of gestational diabetes in pregnancy after the lifestyle intervention or medical nutrition therapy is not found to be working alone. Ideally, it should be added up with the pharmacotherapy. Obviously, medical nutrition therapy should not be any way given up. It should continue. It should be tried to keep more and more stringent. And very important part of the medical nutrition therapy, always we should remember that we should break the food in 2 parts or in multiple small segments. Many a times whenever we are coming across with the gestational diabetes, it is a problem of the postprandial hyperglycemia. Whenever it is pure gestational diabetes, it is postprandial hyperglycemia. And it gets very good control if we give a small food at one time, and postprandial hyperglycemia can be corrected if we give multiple small foods. ADA says that insulin is the preferred medication. ACOG, NICE, all guidelines says that insulin should be the first medication, the most preferred medication. But if a patient or if a female with the hyperglycemia or its family members are not ready, then at least we should control her hyperglycemia by giving the glibenclamide or metformin. NICE guidelines also suggest initiating hypoglycemic medication if glucose targets are not met over 1 to 2 weeks or if ultrasound suggests incipient fetal macrosomia. So macrosomia or fetal outcome or forthcoming fetal outcome are always remains under the consideration of all the guidelines which are running across the world. But only the DIPSI is giving the guidelines which not only takes the consideration of the forthcoming fetus, but also the health of mother is taken under the consideration. If we talk about the insulin therapy, obviously, as I suggested, that insulin is the most preferred therapy in the pregnancy. It's a gold standard management for hyperglycemia in pregnancy because it does not cross placenta. It's absolutely safe for both mother and fetus, preferred by all guidelines as first agent. Many a times when it is to be started and patient is purely of the GDM, there is no hidden pre-GDM, then it gets a very good control in very small amount of the insulin, 0.1 unit per kg body weight would be enough, and many a times it may be required to be lesser. Always remember, insulin requirement is individualized. You are supposed to start with a 0.1 unit per kg body weight, but you may need to reduce this or you may need to increase it. Another thing we should never forget, as the pregnancy advances, the insulin resistance increases, insulin requirement increases. So always keep watching. Never forget after starting the insulin that we don't need to do anything, or patient is to continue as such, whatever, because we have started the insulin. Now we have done our duty and everything is fine. Always keep watching your patient. Every third day or fourth day, you may need to increase the dose of the insulin because IR is continuously increasing with the advancement of the pregnancy. Dose can be increased on follow-up till 2 hours post-glucose is around 120 as we have suggested in our targets. If she is found with 200 or more anytime in pregnancy, a female with hyperglycemia in pregnancy should be treated like pre-GDM without giving any MNT trial alone. Always remember, MNT trial alone is not recommended. You should start the MNT trial together with insulinization. Pre-GDM patients should ideally be treated, may it be type 1 or type 2, should ideally be treated with the insulin, may it be the regular insulin would be enough if it is purely GDM and prandial hyperglycemia is the only problem. But if it is there, the fasting hyperglycemia, then probably we can have the premix or we can have the basal bolus. In India, we all are accustomed of using and we are in habit of using the premix insulin. And many a times it works also, it works very good. Patient don't get even hypoglycemia that much while using the premix conventional insulin. Now, many a times I found the reason may be there that people in India are suffering with NAFLD. People of India are suffering with obesity, and many a times they are also having some pre-GDM or sometimes they are having the glucose intolerance, or you can say pre-diabetes. And even in the situation of nothing is there, they may be having simply fatty liver, and which may lead to fasting hyperglycemia. So that fasting hyperglycemia is not because of the gestational diabetes, but because of the metabolic instinct which are carrying forward by the female before pregnancy to inside the pregnancy. But for the first time, they are being caught when the first trimester you go and check the hyperglycemia in the female. In these female, premix works very good. So there is no set algorithm for the insulin therapy. As I said, always we should go with the individualization of the therapy, but target should be the 120, whatever kind of the therapy we are using, may it be premix, may it be basal bolus. Whatever the therapy is being started, we can start with the 4 units to give trial, or you can start with 0.1 units per kg body weight. Here you can see in this picture here, we have given the sites where a female can inject the insulin injection. Many times this problem remains with the family members of the female who is pregnant, and sometimes mother also has in her mind that if she will inject the insulin on the anterior abdominal wall, it may harm to his fetus or it may harm to his child, forthcoming child. So although this is just baseless, there is no medical ground of this kind of the myth, but still, if such kind of the thing remains in the mind, we can suggest the alternative sites for injecting insulin to her. So we can, as I already said, we can increase the dose of the insulin after 3 days and 4 days whenever it is required. Keep on checking the SMBG, keep on checking her glucose. Even continuous glucose monitoring is also very important tool for checking the hyperglycemia in pregnancy, which is advancing with the increase in the pregnancy, with the advancement of the pregnancy. There are certain conditions where we should never forget to use insulin, and only insulin should be used. We should not think about any other oral medication. Like if we are going through with the over DM or their blood glucose have been found in a female at any point of time 200 or more than that, then insulin is the only answer for such conditions. Early detection of the GDM, suppose you got the gestational diabetes or you got the hyperglycemia in first week of the pregnancy, second week of the pregnancy, third week of the pregnancy, less than 20 weeks, then insulin is the right answer for such patient. Need for pharmacotherapy is arising before 30 weeks, insulin should be preferred. If the lady is in the renal or hepatic dysfunction, GI intolerance, high baseline HbA1c is there, or there are the history of the adverse reactions for the oral medications, there is some history of congenital anomaly in the previous pregnancy, hydramnios, maternal and fetal distress, or patient may be having other NCD like hypertension. She might have been having history of preeclampsia or IOGR in the previous pregnancy, then we should always go with the insulin. Now question arises, what insulin regimen would be the best? FOGSI suggests that human insulin and analogs always works almost equivalent. They are not finding that analogs are superior than the human insulin. Obviously, the analogs are more comfortable because they are more free from the hypoglycemia. They are comfortable. They provide almost a smooth track for a female or any patient dose who is using for hyperglycemia for the maintaining his glucose correction. So that's why the Aspart and Lispro, these are the recommended analogs. Many times this question arises, a female who is already taking some insulin or some oral medication and suddenly she becomes the pregnant. So many times it happens in our country. Many pregnancies are not really planned. Then what should be done? Because at the 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, usually the mother should come to know that she has got the pregnant once she misses her first period. And then she gets checked around 5th week is the earliest when she knows about the pregnancy. In such situation, should we switch the patient to the safer analog or safer human insulin, or should we continue? This is the biggest question for the many of the prescribers. Here I would like to suggest you the recommendations are like that. Even if your patient is using any such insulin which is not recommended in the pregnancy, you should not change at this point of the time, because you may be requiring at least 1 or 2 weeks to control your patient again on the new variety of the regimen, and this will harm the forthcoming fetus because the organogenesis starts after the 8th week of the pregnancy. And as Dr. Sheshia has told, from 11th week of the pregnancy, the fetal pancreas starts working. So this would never be a very good time to switch her on the different kind of the regimen. We should continue with the regimen, whatever she is taking. So available insulin and analogs are there. I have given in this table. You can take the screenshot of this. I'm not going in the detail of everyone. You can take the screenshot of this and you can use this table for your future references. But the points to consider, insulin regimen should always be individualized. There is no superiority of one regimen to another. Always it depends on the person to person. The same regimen may be very good for one person, may not be very good for the another person. Start prandial insulin. If postprandial glucose is high, the starting dose should be 4 units. Use basal or intermediate acting insulin at bedtime if fasting plasma glucose is more than 110. Basal bolus insulin regimen should be preferred in pre-GDM. Dose titration based on the pregnancy physiology and insulin pump therapy many a time is very much useful if it is being used in the pregnancy. It gives very good results. Let's talk about the oral anti-diabetic medications, which are the talk of town, and many people wants to listen about them because they are very easy to use. Sulfonylurea, biguanide, and alpha-glucosidase inhibitor. These are the three molecules which are having some studies in our country. Metformin is having a big study, that is the MIG, which has been done in last decade. But unfortunately, the Indians has participated in very little number in the MIG study. Glibenclamide has been studied for the first time by many of the workers, but we must understand what is the rationale for the use of any oral anti-diabetic in the gestational diabetes. Whenever we are coming across with the GDM, why should we use and what kind of the oral medication should be used? Underlying principle for any oral anti-diabetic medication to be used in pregnancy, that it should be effective. It should be taking care of both varieties of the physiology. What are those? Continuously increasing insulin resistance, which is more important in the pregnancy. At the same time, once this insulin resistance is increasing, then mother's pancreas may not be sufficiently enough to secrete the insulin to combat that insulin resistance or that continuously insulin resistance. That continuously insulin resistance is not well reciprocated by the maternal pancreas and insulin secretion goes down. So whatever the insulin regimen or whatever the oral medication we are choosing, that should be working on both these physiologies, then it will be effective. It is reasonable to assume that treatment of GDM with oral antidiabetic should also be effective as they correct the pathogenesis of the hyperglycemia. As I said, under very early time, even in 2000 and 1991, Langer has done few studies with the glibenclamide, where he found that glibenclamide with insulin compared and found 82% of the glibenclamide users and 88% of the insulin users achieved the targeted level of the control. He also found there is no significant transport of the glibenclamide in either a maternal to fetal or fetal to maternal direction, but this could not be proven later. Now we know there is the transfer of the placental transfer of the glibenclamide. The similar kind of the studies has also been done in India. It's not that we are not having the Indian data regarding the glibenclamide. Dr. V. Sheshia and Dr. Anjalakshi has done, Dr. Balaji has done the studies of the glibenclamide in 2006, and they also found that they are working very good. They are effective enough, but not necessary they are safe too, because they are crossing the placenta. They may cause the neonatal hypoglycemia. They may increase the risk of macrosomia leading to delivery complication. Limited long-term safety data are still to be achieved, and insulin therapy may be preferred for severe or poorly controlled gestational diabetes. Glyburide or glibenclamide is contraindicated in type 1 diabetes, pre-existing type 2 diabetes, or significant renal or hepatic impairment. So that's why sulfonylureas in the form of the glibenclamide is not very good choice to use in the pregnancy. But once we talk about the metformin, lot of users are there. Metformin is very well used in our country. And good thing is that metformin is recommended by the national guidelines in the diagnosis and management of gestational diabetes. FOGSI has also approved them. But don't forget, metformin is the molecule which crosses the placenta. Obviously, insulin is the first choice for anyone, but whosoever is not ready to take the insulin, or the insulin dose is continuously increasing, MNT is failed, then metformin could be the another thing which can be added, but it is recommended by various authorities to add up to the therapy at different times. What we know at earliest recommendation is of 12 weeks of the pregnancy. As far as the dose regimens are concerned, 500 milligram twice daily orally you can use. need 20% increase in the doses because of the increased renal elimination of the metformin. If the blood sugar is not controlled with maximum dose and MNT advised the insulin, metformin should be associated with less hypoglycemia and less weight gain as compared to the insulin, and it may be added if high dose of the insulin is required. So metformin use expected to rise along with the global diabetes increase. Once the diabetes is increasing with increase in weight and obesity, then metformin remains a better choice here. As if we talk about the MIG study, we found that MIG study is the study which has really initiated the use of the metformin in pregnancy. But don't forget, this was the study which has included in both of its arms, which has used the metformin and insulin, the females, those who are having their BMI 35, around 35. So always remember, we Indians never have the BMI around 35. So whenever we are having a pregnancy kind of the situation where insulin resistance is very much needed, then in such condition, how much judicious it would be to use the metformin, since from very beginning, it needs a lot of robust data, a number of studies where we can have a good experience of the metformin and which is well documented also. In this MIG study, Rowan and its colleagues has demonstrated that the 363 women assigned to metformin, 92.6% continued to receive metformin till their delivery, and 46.3% required insulin to be supplemented to them. And it was found that there were no serious adverse events associated with the use of the metformin. And even after the children has been born, these children were followed till the 2 years and later on till the 9 years of the age, and it has been found that there was no adverse effect of the use of the metformin in these children who have been born to these mothers who used the metformin in their pregnancy. So it has been found to be largely safe in those mothers who used these metformin in their pregnancy time. There has been one important observation and the further follow-up where we could see that metformin, the children, those who have been exposed to the metformin during their pregnancy time or during when they were in the womb, they developed less visceral fat and remained more insulin sensitive. So metformin has worked well even for the children. It continued working in the next generation also. There are certain more evidences with the metformin to be used in the pregnancy apart from the MIG study. I'm not going into the detail because time is shorter. So placental transfer is there. Metformin is able to cross the mature human placenta. Then fetal exposure must be considered when treating pregnant women with metformin. Let's talk about the situation PCOS. Many a time people say once the PCOS is there, a female is got pregnant after the use of the metformin, then we should stop once she is pregnant, or we should stop after the first trimester, or we should stop. But more difficult situation for any metformin related treatment is in the first trimester. So there are certain studies which we can say that found macrosomic babies and small for gestational age in the metformin group. They were significantly reduced as compared with the diet group. In the study which was done by the Gandhi and its associated, metformin group had a significantly lower incidence of the macrosomia, a significant reduction in supplementary insulin use, and with no significant differences in metformin maternal outcome measures. And similar kind of the results we could see with another study which has been done by the Middle East by Eza et al. Acorbos, only one study is available of the 30 gestational diabetes patient done by Dr. Anjalakshi and Dr. Sheshia, and we cannot recommend this molecule on the basis of such a small amount of the data. So recent understanding about the metformin's role in the gestational diabetes management, the pros and cons of the metformin in GDM management, lower risk of the neonatal hypoglycemia, less maternal weight gain as compared to the insulin, slightly increased risk of the prematurity according to 2015 systematic review. Nearly half of GDM patients still need insulin for glucose control. Metformin crosses the placenta but is not found to be teratogenic with higher cord blood levels than maternal levels. No adverse pregnancy outcome reported. Numerous studies are there like mixed study, but long-term data is still lacking. If we talk about the postnatal effects, as I already said, after the 18 months, after the 9 years of the age, it has been studied among the children which have been born to the mother who used metformin in their pregnancy, and it has been found that insulin protection from the insulin resistance continued till the age of the 9 years. So in conclusion, hyperglycemia in pregnancy as well as gestational diabetes is associated with an increased risk of the maternal and fetal complication. MNT and lifestyle modification form the cornerstone of the GDM management. Insulin is the preferred agent for management of diabetes in pregnancy. Insulin therapy has to be individualized. Oral agents like metformin may be an alternative where insulin is not acceptable or possible after a discussion of the known risk and the need for more long-term safety data in offspring. Both glibenclamide and metformin have been widely used, not only in Europe and South Africa, without reported adverse side effects to the fetus, but also in India. But outcome data are not available in India because we Indians are not in a habit to data keeping, not in a habit to the data procuring. So more studies are needed to rationalize the role of the metformin in thin Indian fat females in pregnancy. We know that Indians are the thin Indian fat having the 3 times fat as compared to the Caucasian counterpart. So maybe we may maybe we may need metformin much more as compared to our Caucasian counterpart, because we are still having the lesser BMI, but despite that we are having much more fat than our Caucasian counterpart. Thank you very much for your kind listen.
Thank you very much, Anuj. Very nice talk and very elaborate deliberation on the pharmacotherapy of diabetes in pregnancy. Thank you very much for joining us here. And I think the chat box doesn't have any other questions for you as such. And I'll hand it over to Bharati. Thank you so much for having me here, Bharati and Lakshmi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's really very nice to have you, and I have sent you just one message and you have accepted and you are here. So it is really very good, and thank you very much. So, all talks are very good from beginning, Dr. Lakshmi Madam, Dr. Sheshya and Dr. Anuj. So now we come to the last part of our today's webinar, and that is panel discussion, and there is only a small comprehensive panel that was on the clinical tips for management of GDM. So I am just opening my slides.
Thank you, Anuj. On behalf of ICOG, we really appreciate your time and efforts to teach our delegates on pharmacotherapy of GDM. Thank you.
So as we all know that today we have in this panel with a very 4 seniors obstetricians who has worked a lot in the GDM, and they have spare time for this webinar. So thank you very much. First, our panelist expert is none other than Dr. Preeti Kumar. We all know that she is a renowned obstetrician and gynecologist and chairperson Safe Motherhood Committee. Dr. Preeti, you are here?
Yes.
Hello.
Right from the beginning, I'm here.
Yeah, Preeti is very much here. Yeah.
Dr. Preeti?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, okay. And then we have Dr. Komal Chavan. We all know that she is a chairperson, FOGSI Medical Disorder of Pregnancy Committee. And then we have Dr. Meena Samant. She was the president, Patna Obs and Gynae Society. She is president, Patna OBGY Society, as well as she is a senior consultant and chairperson, FOGSI Clinical Research Committee. And then we have Dr. B. Aruna Suman. She is a professor and head Vice Principal, Government Medical College, Telangana, Joint Secretary, FOGSI 2021, and she has a Vice President, OGHS. So we come to our comprehensive webinar because we have 30 minutes and it's a very clinical thing. So first I would like to Doctor asked to Dr. Preeti Kumar that there are lots of issues related to terminology for diabetes, like the gestational diabetes, diabetes in pregnancies, and hyperglycemia in pregnancy. So, what is the classification of hyperglycemia in pregnancy, GDM, and what is actually glycemic target?
Thank you, Bharti, for that question. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. Lakshmi and yourself for inviting me to this forum. If I think everybody has seen Dr. Lakshmi Shikhande's first presentation, she has very clearly mentioned about the classification. I must say that the hyperglycemia in pregnancy is an umbrella for all kinds of sugar disorders in pregnancy. So there are two kinds basically. One is GDM, as Dr. Lakshmi has rightly said, beyond 24 weeks or 20 weeks when the placenta is formed. And if it is a pre-existing diabetes, that is diabetes in pregnancy, that is a pre-existing diabetes, which has landed up in this. And the second question is regarding the why we want to categorize is, again, it is important because if it is a pre-existing diabetes, then definitely you have to plan your pregnancy well, because the end organ problems can be there. And in gestational diabetes, you need to, you diagnose it for the first time, and then it is easy to manage if you have diagnosed it earlier. Then the second is, the question is, I think, regarding the glycemic targets. The question, I think, reverse the slide, please, Bharti. The first slide. The first question that you asked me regarding the glycemic targets. I think a lot of controversies regarding the glycemic targets, what Dr. Shea has mentioned, that the HbA1c level of 5.4, and he very clearly mentioned that it should be something between 99 to 110. But for gestational diabetes mellitus per se, the sugar should be maintained, the fasting less than 90 or 95, and postprandial less than 120. So this is what is the regarding the glycemic target.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Meena Samant, you are here. Dr. Meena. Anyone can take this question, that why diabetes is common in pregnancy, in a very short, so that we can correlate it with further management.
I was here. Meena? Have you logged out?
Hello?
Yeah. Meena is very much here. Meena?
Yeah.
I was muted actually, so I could. Can we get back to the question, please?
Yeah.
I just missed it. Diabetes is very much common, especially it is common in pregnancy and very much so in our country. First thing, our ethnicity. And secondly, there are certain effects of pregnancy itself which makes us more prone to diabetes during pregnancy. Pregnancy is also called a pre-diabetic stage. There is insulin resistance. There are certain hormones released from the placenta and other hormones of pregnancy that counter. So,
Meena, your voice is not clear, I think. Can't hear you.
Hello. So am I audible?
Yes, now you're audible.
So I think I will just, okay. Pregnancy, there are hormones and which are counter to the insulin, that counter insulin, and that is why there is insulin resistance, and pregnancy tend to have more higher glucose levels. So, and these are some of these hormones. They're produced by the placenta, the human placental lactogens, the cortisols. Then also there is increase, insulinase is produced, which can make it a more diabetogenic state.
So basically, Dr. Preeti and Dr. Meena has told that, of course, it is a very important issue, and this is an important thing because glycemic target, we should know that what is actual, and it is common because pregnancy itself is a diabetogenic state, and the women who are especially high risk for diabetes, they have more tendency to develop diabetes. So, Dr. Komal, why important to discuss GDM? Why we are discussing? What are important adverse effects on the mother and fetus?
Yes, I think, thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank Lakshmi Madam and Dr. Bharti for inviting me, and it's a lovely, fruitful discussion which is going on. And diabetes is a need of our topic because we know that diabetes has an impact both on the mother and baby, and we get adverse pregnancy outcome. If diabetes is in early pregnancy, we have early abortions. There can be high chances of infection, preterm labor, PPROM. Diabetic patients are more predisposed to even hypertension, pregnancy-induced hypertension. Polyhydramnios is so common, which can lead to PPROM and also postpartum bleed, hemorrhage, PPH. So we can have this dreadful complication. And with the most intrapartum complication like shoulder dystocia, which is so common during pregnancy. And apart from that, the medical complication which a mother can have, it predisposes to diabetic retinopathy, nephropathy, even diabetic ketoacidosis if not treated, and long-term effect of this diabetes, which are there on the mothers. It is after pregnancy even, they are very chance of becoming type 2 diabetes in the later life. So that impact is there on the mother. And apart from that, the fetus also has its impact. The fetus there'll be early congenital malformation, the organ development will be affected, there will be growth restriction, sudden intrauterine fetal death. We'll have a patient coming in and we need to know that she suddenly has come in third trimester and there is a fetal demise. So IUFDs are very common. Then birth injuries because of the macrosomia, and these macrosomic baby, when they are having when they deliver, also the neonatal period is not rosy. They have hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hypobilirubinemia, and everything, So the infant of the infant of diabetic mother is a special, like it needs to be treated with a proper neonatal care.
Okay. So now next.
Bharti, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I think we should add that the mother and the fetus both are at a risk for long-term complications. Like the babies are also, there are cognitive disorders which are found in the patients, mothers who were diabetic. The obesity is more common, hyperglycemia, and the baby is also more common. There is a risk for cardiovascular diseases also in the baby if the baby is exposed to the diabetic environment.
NCDs become more common.
More common, not only in the mother but also in
the baby.
Yes.
So that is true. So that's why this is very important that we all are doing efforts to early predict or prevention, or as early, if she is having the GDM, then optimal treatment. So Dr. Preeti, how important that can pre-gestational counseling? Is it helpful in prevention and management of GDM?
Yes, very much, because we are sitting in a country like India, which is an Asian country, and we know that Asians are at a high risk of developing diabetes. So I think every girl or every woman who is going for the conception should have a preconception counseling. It's not only the diabetes, because the obesity is so high, PCOS is so high. So there are more chances in Indian settings that they might land up in hyperglycemia. So first and foremost, you have to supplement, you have to reduce the weight. BMI is important. If it's already a hyperinsulinic or the sugars are not controlled, you have to bring down the sugar levels. The HbA1c earlier was 6. Now Dr. Sheshaya says that it should be as near as 5.5 or 5.4. Very difficult for the Indian setups. Then you have to, if she's already on folic acid supplementation, the diet has to be improved and the sugar levels are to be normal. If it is a comorbid condition like hypertension and all, then the drugs need to be, tailored down, like enarapil, captopril. These are ACE inhibitors, should be avoided in pregnancy. So these are the things. And the target organs, if she's a known case of diabetes, then definitely the target organ should also be tested before the patient is planned.
Dr. Preeti, and beside that, once doing the preconception counseling, then if one woman is already having the diabetes, so one thing that blood sugar should be controlled, and beside that, this fact you all must know that the type 1 and type 2 diabetes, we are always concerned that whether type 2 diabetes, it is mild or it have a least it has a better outcome, but here the pregnancy outcome are generally similar with type 1 and type 2, though
it is true that with type 1, there are the more micro hypoglycemia and diabetic ketoacidosis because of more microvascular complications. So it is also important that if we are doing the pre-gestational counseling or any time we are getting opportunity, so we can get find out that type of diabetes and for how long she is having. And Dr. Suman, Dr. Aruna Suman, as what counseling we can do for the related to glycosylated hemoglobin and how we can relate it with congenital anomalies and or outcome in the GDM patients.
Yes, definitely. As Preeti Madam said, we have to talk about the modifiable risk factors and we can correct them. And at the same time, we have to tell them how frequently we are going to do the blood sugar levels and how frequently we can do this HbA1c. HbA1c is done in the first visit or a first contact when she comes to us so that we can assess the blood sugar properly, how the blood sugar was in the past 3 to 4 weeks. And if it is high, if it is more than 10 also, there is definitely a risk for congenital anomalies, but we need not do the termination and we can follow the woman properly with proper guidance and anomaly scan. So we can definitely do HbA1c once and we can repeat it only for the risk assessment, but not for the assessment of the glucose levels. So HbA1c is 5.5%, 2 to 3% of the congenital anomalies can be there. If it is more than 7.6%, 4%. If it is more than 14%, it can be 20%. So we have to definitely talk to the women, both husband and wife, regarding this.
Bharti, can I say something? I differ on one point, Aruna. HbA1c we do not do in the first visit. It's the only single step test we do it.
Yes.
If the single step test shows a value of more than 140, then only we do the HbA1c to differentiate whether it is a pre-existing diabetes or it's a onset of first. So we never
only
do
after diagnosis, not a routine test, ma'am. Only after diagnosis. If the
only
GDP
after diagnosis
is high, if it is more than 140.
Yes.
Then only we do HbA1c.
Yes.
As Bharti ma'am asked regarding HbA1c, I was talking about.
Yeah, and even I want to add that patients who are actually having a pre-diabetic, I think when they come for preconceptional counseling, or if you find an elderly or an obese patient coming for preconceptional counseling, you can do an HbA1 test for those patients and then decide and counsel them how they can maintain the control levels preconception.
Yes. And assess the risk factor.
Yes, the risk factor, we can counsel them preconception. But per se, when the patient...
we have to exclude diabetic nephropathy and diabetic retinopathy, that is more important.
Yes.
And treat before conception.
And when we get pregnant, we all agree with Dr. Preeti, we do the DIPSI test.
All end organ.
All patients at the first visit
Even
we
if
do as a screening test.
Yeah, if she's elderly, she's obese, maybe
everything, all patients.
Anything.
When
even
they conceive, we do screening by DIPSI test.
Komal, I just wanted to highlight about the cardiac status. That should also be tested in these patients before planning for the pregnancy. If she's elderly, she's obese, she's IVF conception, late conception, these are the patients with a pre-existing hypertension. You should test also the cardiac status, the functioning of the cardiac state. That's also very important.
So I would just like to add one point, because we are in the preconception state and patient if is not optimized, then we should also consult the patient regarding the use of effective contraception until such a state is reached.
And one more thing is we have to definitely study the psychological aspect of the woman and support her regarding the mental state of the woman during pregnancy.
And folic acid supplementation, again, very, very important.
Basically, this is true, that fact that preconceptional counseling has definitely role, very good role. And as Dr. Shesha has said that we have to vigilant for 8 weeks and 10 weeks. But again, we have to mobilize or motivate our women to come for the antenatal visits as early as possible. And even from the now that every woman should have preconceptional counseling, then we can have a prevention of GDM, have a more impact. required. So this is, we all got that in pre-conceptional counseling, all facts has to be told to the couple, as well as we have to rule out all high-risk factors, whether she can have GDM or not, or we can have diabetes. Besides that, we have to rule out whether she is having already diabetes, and then if glycosylated hemoglobin, it is helpful in telling you the prognosis of the issue. So whenever it is required, there should be no hesitation, because though it is not in the regular screening test, because it is not cost effective, but wherever it is required, it can be done, and it is for documentation and for further monitoring and follow up in the cases, it is good. So now to come to the next question, we all know we already done the screening of GDM. I think now every one of us know that how it should be done only by the universal screening. There is no doubt about that. In India, in every woman, the GDM screening should be done. And as already discussed in the previous talk, so I'm not going in detail.
Bharti, just one point, because there was a question in the chat box when Dr. Shishaiya was presenting. Somebody wrote that 8 weeks, if the patient comes, we should do 2 tests. One is postprandial, like Dr. Shishaiya said, and it should be less than 110 for prediction, and then testing 75 gram glucose. So I just want to clarify here, again, what Dr. Uday said. Again, we want to emphasize that single step test you have to do with 75 gram glucose after 2 hours. That's very important. That is still in the pipeline. Prediction studies are still in the pipeline. It's not yet validated. So please do not start doing it. Sir just presented the concept that prediction can be there with a postprandial of 110. So for us to understand right now is the screening or the testing. That should be single step test using 75 gram glucose at very first visit as soon as the patient comes to your chamber.
According to our government guidelines, this is very true that it is recommended twice during antenatal. First, whenever women contact as early as possible in pregnancy, and the second should be done during 24 to 28 weeks. If the first test is negative, there should be at least 4-week gap between the 2 tests. Test is to be conducted for all women if she comes late even in pregnancy for antenatal time at the time of first contact. तो अगर 3rd trimester में भी पहली बार pregnancy में आ रही है woman और उसका test नहीं हुआ है तो should be done. If she present beyond 28 weeks of pregnancy, only 1 test is to be done at the first point of contact. So this is very important, because many of our women are actually not diagnosed because they are not properly screened. And then we all know that how it is done. Dr. Preeti has already told you that 75 gram glucose has to be given in 300 ml of water, and she has to consume. Woman has to consume within 5 minutes, and 2 hours after the oral glucose load, you have to done the blood sugar level. And if vomiting occur within 30 minutes, then you have to repeat the test next day. If vomiting occur after 30 minutes, the test is continued. And this is the threshold plasma glucose level of 140 milligram per deciliter. More or equal is taken as cutoff for diagnosis of GDM. So this is, I think, basic steps we all obstetricians must know, and we should not miss this. And then comes to a case that is a woman.
Bharti, we should, from this platform, we should send a clear message that if possible, we should do a 3rd test at 32 weeks also. Because approximately 28 to 30% of the GDM are detected in the last trimester. So another test should be done at 32 weeks also, besides 24 to 28 weeks. If possible, you should also do the 3rd test.
In high-risk women or every woman, ma'am?
Try to do in every
Government of India guideline says twice.
Because we are high risk, Aruna. Asian females are high risk. All Asian females are high risk in all patients.
So you want us to do for 3 times?
Yes, Dr. Sanjay Gupta has done a very good study. I think 28% of the GDM were detected in the last trimester, that is 32 weeks.
Because we do twice only, ma'am, because our OP is more than 100. So we do it twice. Okay, I take up.
Okay, the Government of India guidelines, because that is in 2008.
But as per DIPSI, it's recommended thrice in
3 times. Yes.
3 times. In every trimester, it is recommended. It is there in the recommendation. Is recommended in every trimester.
It should be done. And if women comes as early as possible, then in first trimester also. And 28 to 32 weeks, we all know that is a peak time. So okay. Then there is a case when is a woman, she comes to you in a gynae OPD with 10 weeks pregnancy, with overweight, with normal blood pressure, with higher blood sugar. And she is diagnosed as a case of gestation diabetes mellitus with high risk. on screening, she has got 166. So how to proceed with the management of the case? What approach should be there? What basic investigation one has to be done? What from the history one has to be raised out? And how has to decide the mode of management? So start karte hain Suman madam se. Yeah, Dr. Suman ma'am, please.
Ma'am, can you show me the case, please? Actually, she is 10 weeks, known gestational diabetic. You see that?
Yeah.
Yes, with GDM. So she's 10 weeks now. So I would like to do her blood sugar levels, urine for culture sensitivity, prevent urinary tract infection and treat. And I would like to adjust her the dosage of insulin, because in the first trimester, insulin will have a better effect. I'll take a proper history if she's on metformin or oral anti-hypoglycemic agents or insulin, and adjust the dose if the sugar levels are high. But in the first trimester, I would prefer insulin rather than oral hypoglycemic agents if she's not using it.
To do? हम लोग opinion ले लेते हैं experts के. Yeah.
Expert Anuj kahan gaya? So in this case, definitely HbA1c has its role, because we need to diagnose whether it is a pre-GDM. And 166 milligram obese patient, definitely what Aruna said, insulin is the drug of choice. But before that, we have to give her a trial of MNT. MNT has to be given for 10 to 15 days. If she gets control with that, it's fine. Otherwise, you add insulin. Again, it is very important for us to understand if the values would have been more than 200, then I would have started MNT along with the insulin straight away, because she would be a case of pre-existing death. But for 166,
ma'am, she is having urinary tract infection along with high blood sugars.
It's okay. 166 is the sugar level. Suppose if HbA1c is just 6.3. So it's not so bad. So you have to give MNT for 10 to 15 days. Advise her well. If she follows the advice and the sugars are not getting controlled, definitely insulin is the drug of choice. But if she's not ready to take, you can give metformin, because UK has recently recommended, they have put it into the records. They have put into the recommendations that metformin is safely given in the first trimester. They are recommending now.
What your opinion? And Dr.
Yeah, here we note that the patient is pretty heavy. She is 102 grams. I think metformin may have an edge, because it will also some extent take care. And MNT, it's not something that we have to one step. It's something a part and parcel of the treatment. Even when we are starting with any medication, this has to be routine with this patient. And some form of exercises. She keeps herself busy with one, and she may also be a high risk for DVT if we are not careful. So
yes, please, Meena. I'll then add one point.
And then as we see that she also has, of course, treating, because just treating the infection may actually bring down her sugars to quite some extent. Then at this point of time, and also look for any comorbidities, and because they may be there. She has a family history. She's a high-risk patient, as has already been.
Komal, you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to add. See, I agree with everybody. Everybody has brought out perfect points, but we are in the gestational age of 10.3, and so we know that we are in the early trimester, first trimester, and we are worried about the organogenesis. So HbA1c level would be a decisive factor, whether we need to start the treatment right away or we need to go ahead with a medical nutritional therapy. But I think, believe me, even if we start insulin therapy, medical nutritional therapy has to be started. So both need to be initiated with proper counseling of this patient, because we don't want the fetal surveillance, the anomalies, early anomaly scan, the fetal parameter, everything, all the course to be explained. She falls into high risk category because of the obesity, because of the family history of diabetes. And I think she is a candidate to have sugars. So she requires a thorough management in her pregnancy all over. So medical nutritional therapy, exercise, and if HbA1c levels are high, definitely go for insulin.
So that is true. What the conclusion is, and what the most recommendation says, that there is no harm to start insulin. Insulin is a very effective and very safe drug. So whenever you think that woman is already the pre-diabetic, or she is having the high glucose, or she is on the high risk factors, or she has obese, or she has chances of developing or worsening more things, then definitely insulin can be started. MNT is as added. It could be added, so it would help. And it is also said that when you are MNT is the
part of diabetes management. So it should be continued. And then you have to follow the things. So because our obstetricians, we all must be very much familiar and we must be trained for MNT. Because in every case in GDM, even we are giving the metformin, even we are giving the insulin. So MNTs should be added. So doctor, anyone can want to highlight MNT? Purpose of MNT, Dr. Preeti?
The purpose of MNT is to restrict the calorie intake so that the maternal weight gain of the fetus is not compromised. So that depends on how much calories the patient is going to take. So there is a very specific formula that Government of India has given through ICMR, that is BMR into physical activity level, where we can calculate how many calories that patient actually needs. Because Dr. Lakshmi has also shown that slide, how much weight gain should be there. So it should also be mentioned right at the first visit, how much weight gain is expected in this patient. Like she's already 102. She must be crossing a BMI of 30. So a weight gain of more than maybe 5 to 7 kgs is more than enough for her. So this is how we calculate the calorie requirement, and then approximately 40 to 45% carbohydrate, then rest of them protein 20 to 30%, and then fat. So this is how we divide, and it should be the divided meals, 3 major and 3 minor meals, small meals so that the hyperglycemia is not there. So we always give 6 meals in divided doses and with low glycemic index.
So that is true, because it is a lifestyle modification. These two are the basic part of the diabetes management. So monitoring blood sugar, how frequently blood sugar monitoring should be there, Dr. Komal?
Yes, blood sugar monitoring, we need to train patient for doing self-monitoring of the blood sugar at home. And it should be minimum monitoring is 4 times that they need to do it, a fasting, and then postprandial. Then we can do it at the before lunch, then pre-dinner and after dinner. At least that is what I tell my patients. And they need to keep monitoring and maintain a monitoring chart. And every follow-up, the patient carries the monitoring chart. We need to flag it that if they feel that any level is going abnormal, they need to report it immediately. And we need to keep that blood sugar monitoring under check. Need to know that because patient is on insulin, we really don't want the patient to have hypoglycemia. So we require a strict monitoring of this patient, and then patient needs to follow up, and then accordingly the dosage of insulin can be adjusted.
True, and it is recommended that if you want to give in some patients the metformin, then ideally should be started from 20 weeks onwards. And dose, we all know 500 milligrams to 2 grams. And if BP is not controlled with maximum dose of metformin, then you can add the insulin. So insulin therapy is already Dr. Anuj has discussed in detail. It is always written, so not going in the detail. And fetal monitoring is important. It is already told by someone that ultrasound at 18 to 20 weeks and echo at 20 to 24 weeks is very important. And whole time of pregnancy care, one has to counsel the patient and all important issues, because GTM pregnancy, there are lots of prognostic factors and lots of outcomes. So one continuous counseling is important. And from say 26 weeks, every 2 to 3 weeks liquor volume, abdominal circumference also be seen, that if it is more than, of course, if we have to go optimal blood glucose control, chromosomal abnormalities and TT, they all have to be ruled out.
Bharti, just one point I want to add regarding pharmacotherapy, which is important.
Yes.
Suppose if you have put a patient on metformin after 20 weeks of gestation, you should be very cautious. If there is a placental insufficiency,
Yes.
you should not add metformin, like cases of IUGR or preeclampsia. So these cases, you should be very particular in using insulin. Metformin is not a drug of choice. The second thing is, if you're using metformin, suppose it's what I think Dr. Shishaya has written a very beautiful paper where he mentioned that even one spike of high sugars in mother, just one spike, that causes an increased sugar level in amniotic fluid. And this amniotic fluid, the fetus keeps on regurgitating again and again. So just one spike can cause a hyperglycemia in the fetus for hours together. So that causes hyperinsulinemia in the fetus. So you have to be very particular if you are putting a patient on metformin and you find that the fasting and the postprandial values are normal, but still you are getting the obstetric complications like macrosomia, or you are getting polyhydramnios, more weight gain, then you need to recheck your schedule and you need to shift her to the insulin. That's my take on this.
नहीं, बिल्कुल correct है, madam. This is true. So I think audiences have got this point.
Ma'am, if there is IUGR and as well as diabetic nephropathy and retinopathy, even if this is there,
Insulin.
better to start insulin.
Insulin, yes, correct.
Yes.
Any complicated GDM, better to switch over to insulin therapy rather than just continuing with metformin.
Right. So this was about the antenatal care. We have done all, and whenever we need to do fetal activity assessment, this is a very important tool everyone should use in our women. If fetus does not kick 10 times within 2 hours, then woman can come to the hospital. And intrapartum monitoring, so how the time of delivery is decided and how we will monitor in the labor if woman is in insulin. Dr. Koman?
So if woman is already on insulin therapy and she is taking her insulin, because in labor, probably a GDM patient would be not having a very like a normal delivery. We may anticipate that she may high chances of going into operative delivery. So the morning dose of insulin, we can tell her to skip, and then we need to keep her on pint, like a normal saline or something which is a glucose free pint, and need to keep monitoring her as blood glucose level. If the blood glucose level maintains, between 90 to 120, we don't need to add anything, we can just continue. But if the blood glucose levels are higher, like if what is 120, 140, then we need to add insulin as per the sliding scale. We call it as a sliding scale, and we put in insulin, and we can, if it goes above 180, then 8 to 10 units can be added, and it is given at 16 drops. You need to titrate it and see if the blood sugar levels are normal, and we need to continue this till patient delivers. Patients who are on metformin, in fact, they are encouraged to take their whatever meals they're taking, light meals, and take the morning dose of metformin, and patient usually can deliver, and then after delivery we can recheck. But insulin, we really need to be very cautious in monitoring the sugar levels and titrate the insulin as per the sliding scale.
Yes, every 2 hours. Metformin doesn't cause hypoglycemia.
Yes,
whereas
that's
insulin
right.
causes hypoglycemia.
Bharti, just a last point. There are no recommended guidelines when to deliver, as Dr. Lakshmi has rightly said, because every patient has to be individualized. I defer to the point what Dr. Lakshmi Shikhande has presented as a FIGO chart. GDM patients should not exceed beyond 40, whether they are on MT. In Indian context, I'm talking about, because the Asians are at a high risk. So 41, what FIGO chart shows that if it is a controlled on MNT, you can extend the pregnancy till 41. No, the pregnancy should be terminated at 40 weeks, whether it is controlled on diet or whatever reason. But the rest of the high risk factors you have to consider, and then accordingly you have to deliver. You may deliver at 34 or maybe 36, then the complications are there. Suppose hypertensive is there or any other complication is there. So that's the only point I want to add.
So basically what I could get from lots of studies and lots of recommendation for our audiences, that we should, of course, strict blood sugar control. Insulin is, of course, safe drug and effective drug, no doubt about that. And the fetal growth scan is important. And it should be repeated regularly to see the liquor and to see the weight of the fetus. And if there is the blood sugar is uncontrolled, then definitely the antenatal visit should be increased, and the patient should be seen at the specialist center. And simultaneously, you have to monitor for hypertension, proteinuria, and other obstetrical complications. And if woman needs to give antenatal steroid, if you think that delivery is required earlier, then definitely the blood sugar again changes. It can increase, so you have to again adjust the dose or treatment. And daily fetal activity assessment is this. And for intrapartum, if you are patient is going to deliver or you are going to cesarean, then in the previous night you can monitor the all blood sugar levels and all other investigations you can do. And then on the just on the same day you can withhold the insulin dose, because just after delivery the requirement decreases. So and then you monitor with blood sugar charting, that if it is required, then you can add the insulin accordingly. GDM pregnancies are associated with delay in lung maturity of the fetus, so it is recommended that routine delivery prior to 39 weeks normally should not be done if you can continue till 39. Otherwise, in certain conditions, you may require early induction even before 39 weeks.
And timing of delivery should be individualized by obstetricians accordingly. And LSCS is done preferably for the obstetrical indications. We all know macrosomia. If it is more than 4 kg, then of course cesarean is indicated. Shoulder dystocia, the management should be, expert obstetrician should be there, can manage all these things. And this is already done.
And Bharti, intrapartum sugar should be maintained at around 110, not 120. Higher the sugar level in intrapartum, more are the chances of neonatal hypoglycemia. So try to maintain between 110, what Dr. I think Shishya has very clearly mentioned, as far as possible, try to bring down the sugars to 110.
Yes. And antepartum fetal surveillance should be done even with BPP also. Biophysical profile is also important. Only in few cases we can do Doppler where there is growth restriction or vasculopathy.
Yeah, or preeclampsia, yeah.
Preeclampsia, yes.
True. So GDM is a very skilled, very skilled job to monitor the GDM cases, because that is you have to see the fetal growth, you have to see the FGR, as well as you have to see macrosomia, and the only solution is strict blood control. So postpartum care, one can tell about some postpartum care, because our time is finishing. This is the last thing here. How frequently one should see for the blood sugar after delivery? Dr. Meena?
Yeah, actually, the blood sugar tends to go down. They will not be high, especially in the first 24 hours. So after delivery, I mean, whatever your this thing, we have to do immediately. And then on the third day of this thing, fasting and has to be.
So basically, immediate.
And then again, when we're calling her for postnatal checkups, around 8 to 12 weeks, that is the time that we have to again wait for the blood sugar test. That would, of course, be by the DIPSI test.
So immediate postpartum, one has to check the blood sugar after third day, and woman has to be discharged only after 48 hours preferably to see her blood sugar level. And after 6 weeks again, one has to evaluate blood sugar level after 75 gram OGTT, 2-hour plasma glucose if it is normal, if it is less than 140, and IGT 140 to 199, and diabetes if it is 200 or more than that. And women should be, beside that, every 3 years women should be advised for the blood glucose test, because she can have chances of further developing the diabetes mellitus even if she is having the gestational diabetes mellitus. Is there any role of metformin in prevention of gestational diabetes mellitus? I think Dr. Sheshya has already told that after 12 weeks there is no role. So
Dr. Maheshwari, I mean, 3 years is all right, but if it's a high risk case like this obese lady, I think annual checkup would be preferable.
No, Bharti, let me clear here, because in pregnancy you do a fasting or non-fasting 75 gram glucose load. But when the patient delivers, then you have to do 75 gram fasting and then postprandial. That's important. That's important to understand. If she is on, like Dr. Lakshmi has said, if she's on MNT, stop. You don't need anything. But if she's on metformin, third day sugars, again, if she's on insulin, the insulin dose will drop almost 50%. Yes. Then you'll have to repeat again after, if she's on insulin, gradually you have to taper it off. It is not that immediately you'll do it after 6 weeks. No, you have to check the sugars again if she's on insulin, then after 6 weeks, then 6 monthly, then yearly. Every GDM patient should be monitored yearly, lifelong. That's very important take home message. Yes. Every year she should be, monitored. And contraception is very important. Breastfeeding also, decreases the incidence of developing type 2 diabetes in the mothers and also in the baby. So that is very, very important. Whether you're giving oral or you're giving insulin, everything is safe. Breastfeed the baby. That's very important. The only thing is you should check the sugars. Do not give insulin and start feeding, because the sugars usually drop while the mother is feeding. So always check the sugars when you are feeding the mother is feeding the baby. That's very, very important.
True, breastfeeding is very important, and it decreases the requirement of insulin, and well as helpful in decreasing the insulin resistance. So one has to be very clear that insulin doses and management, they altered. So that is true, Dr. Preeti. And the last thing, that the diabetic ketoacidosis is also important thing. One should be as an obstetrician. Though it is true that in the patients on the insulin, or in the patients who are having the
high risk for diabetes, or they are itself they are having the high blood sugar levels, we should always work with the team endocrinologist or physician. They always should be with us. And in the cases like in the where the arterial blood pH is less than 7.3, bicarbonate is less than 15, then chances are that women can have diabetic ketoacidosis, and it is really a certain emergency sort of condition. So again, we all must know that what is the treatment, how we can has to give insulin, and how intravenous fluids, intravenous glucose, and as well as potassium and bicarbonate, these things should to be added. And timely delivery should be done if one is developed a diabetic ketoacidosis, and even if she is at 38 weeks, one should try to deliver that woman. And this is the slides where the timing of the delivery, it is recommended. So already it is individualized tailored treatment, 38 to 39 weeks one can deliver according to the blood sugar level and other conditions. We have already discussed this. So diabetic ketoacidosis already done. Diagnosis is made, important aspect of management of the diabetic ketoacidosis. So this was about the GDM, that once but step starts when one diagnose or one screen it. Because बहुत सारी diabetic GDM patients जो हम नहीं diagnose कर पाते, because they are not screened, so we are not knowing them, and we always have only history of stillbirth. But that actually women were neither screened, neither she has gone to the hospital. Most of the time she was not given the test. So we have lots of women who had only history of stillbirth or BOH or macrosomic baby, but they have not tested. So the thing is that first important message for us, all of obstetricians, that we must screen each and every woman. We must test. As Dr. Preeti has said, that 2 screens, and even in 3rd trimester 1 screening is also very important. And then after screening, we should know how to use when to start the medication. Like we should not hesitate to just only keep the patients on the conservative management, or we are not taking it seriously for starting the medication. So whenever it is required, there is no harm to give insulin, but blood sugar should be controlled. And simultaneously, fetal surveillance by the nowadays the ultrasound is approachable to each and every woman. It is accessible, ultrasound, Doppler, and timely delivery. So,
Bharti, just last point I want to add. When you're following the mother, what Dr. Hema says, whenever you discharge a patient, you put one mark or green mark on the card so that the baby need to be followed by the pediatrician. That's also very, very important.
Yes.
So when we did FOGSI Vistarit project, none of the centers were doing the follow-up. Follow-up is a great challenge in a country. Only 23 to 30% of the GDM patients are being followed. That is why this is the result we concluded from Vistarit project. None of them are following the patients. So once the GDM is diagnosed, the patient delivers, she goes home and she never comes back. So that's every OBGYN should document and try to follow, either call them or text them message, or whenever possible, help them to get this screen every year at least.
Right. तो मोस्टली हम बच्चे का बात नहीं करते, जब हम वुमेन को डिस्चार्ज करते हैं उसका सब बता के हम नॉर्मली उसे फिजिशियन पे रेफर कर देते हैं, उसके बाद हम फॉलो नहीं करते हैं. नॉर्मली ये सिस्टम होता है. सो लाइक वी शुड फॉलो एंड वी शुड एजुकेट द वुमेन that children can have this, and you also have chances of developing diabetes in future. If so, please continue to follow up. So thank you very much.
We have this pilot project also going on in my hospital, also the public hospital where we are joined, and we have stamps. We have put in high risk pregnancy HRP stamps on every patient, and there is a designated call center. They are calling these patients and they're asking them to follow up. So it is just
the problem is
let's see how it works. It is just started this thing.
Komal, so you are sitting in a very tertiary center. The problem, what we faced in Vistarit is they knew about the single step test, but only 30% of the OBGYN were practically doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. The first step, pehla kadam, that's not being done in a country. So we need to focus everywhere about the single step.
Everywhere. So that's what, let's see how follow-up, because follow-up is very important. Screening in diabetes, the surveillance of the fetus, and the follow-up postpartum. So these 3 points are the important salient which we should target.
I think the discussion will never stop. Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi, and thank you, Bharti, for that wonderful, wonderful discussion.
Lovely, and a crisp moderation by Dr. Bharti.
Lovely. Thank you, Bharti ma'am, and thank you, Lakshmi ma'am.
Stop
It was
the
great.
Yeah. Yes,
We
thank you
learned
so much.
today. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Preeti ma'am, thank you so much.
Lovely session.
For
Thanks,
messages.
Dr. Preeti,
Thank you,
Dr. Aruna, Dr.
Thank
Meena.
you. Thank you, Komal.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Meena.
Everyone, Dr. Preeti, thank you. First time I got your time. Actually,
It was there from the beginning till end. Preeti, I appreciate that. And your comments were very practical with a lot of take-home messages.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakshmi.
So thank you, Dr. Preeti, Dr. Komal. You have agreed even in a very short time. And Dr. Meena Samant and Dr. Aruna, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Bharti ma'am.
today was a very good, good evening. We have met also many stalwarts. So it was really good. So thank you, Dr. Lakshmi Shrikhande, madam, that you are keeping such a good ICOG informative webinars. And we are really delighted and thank you for giving us opportunity. Thank you very much. All audience.
And thank you for this important topic, ma'am. Very important.
Yes,
Dr. Lakshmi's talk, I think every point was very much clear when she presented her talk.
It was excellent. All talks were so excellent and very good, crisp messages were given. And I think a lot of people are appreciating this webinar.
Yes.
Thank you, Lakshmi madam.
Thank you all. Jignesh?
तो बाय बाय हो जाए अभी
बाय बाय थैंक यू चाय पे चर्चा हो गई
बाय एवरीबॉडी
चाय अच्छी थी चाय पे चर्चा हो गई
बाय टेक केयर
चाय ले ली थी हमने चाय पे चर्चा के लिए
हो गई अच्छी चर्चा मैंने चाय के साथ शुरू की अभी मैं खत्म
हमने भी हम भी चाय लेके बैठे थे चाय की चर्चा
चलो बाय
बाय बाय